Hi, I'm County Commissioner Sandy Merman, and I'd like to take this opportunity to remind you how important it is to take the time to prepare and make a plan for this hurricane season.
I'm Tim Dudley, your emergency manager. We've learned a lot of valuable lessons over the years, and we want everyone to be as prepared as possible.
The first thing you need to do is sign up for HCFL Alert to get current emergency information by phone or email.
Next, make a plan with your loved ones. Knowing your evacuation zone and your evacuation route is critical.
Keep your gas tank filled. If evacuation becomes necessary, it may be hard to stop for gas. And remember to keep your emergency kit close at hand.
Make sure to check all the supplies in that kit, including medications, radio, flashlights, and batteries.
Pre-register your loved ones with special needs accommodations. Hillsborough has programs in place to help these individuals prepare and find safe shelter.
And don't forget about our furry friends. You'll need food, a pet carrier, proof of current vaccination, and your animal county registration tag.
Have a plan, know your plan. For more information, please visit hcflgov.net/stay safe.
morning. Good morning. Welcome to Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners Land Use Meeting. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation given by Chaplain Commissioner White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, I pray that you will guide this board, our staff, and stakeholders as we seek that balance between the rights of property owners in this county and the community holistically. I pray for strong communities, and as always, I pray for members of our armed forces and first responders. Pray that you will guide them and keep them safe each and every day. I ask for these blessings in your heavenly name. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Ms. Beretta, changes to the agenda.
Good morning, Commissioners. Joe Moretta, Development Services for the record. Several changes for the record I'll get into at this moment. First, on agenda page 5, item B09, Colusa Creek. Staff has continued this item to October 8th, 2019, land use meeting starting at 9 a.m. Next one is agenda page 12, item K01. Staff has removed this item from the agenda. Next one is vacating petition V19-0025. Petitioners requested a continuance to the October 8th, 2019 board meeting starting at 9 a.m. Now moving to the agenda itself. Item A1, RZPD 19-0432. This application is being continued by staff to October 8th board meeting starting at 9 a.m. Item A2, DRI 19-1042. This application is being continued to October 8th board meeting starting at 9 a.m. Item A3, vacating petition V18-0026. The petitioner is requesting a continuance to the October 8th board meeting starting at 9 a.m. Item A4, PRS 19-0728. This application is out of order, is being continued November 12th board meeting starting at 9 a.m. Item A5, PRS 19-0778. This application is being continued to October 8th, 2019 board meeting starting at 9 a.m. It's a matter of right. Item A6, PRS 19-1132. This application is out of order, being continued November 12th board meeting starting at 9 a.m. Board members, that concludes the changes to the agenda.
A motion by Commissioner Merman, second by Commissioner White to approve the changes to the agenda. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried 6-0.
Have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Commissioner Merman, second by Commissioner Kemp to approve the consent agenda. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote. I'm sorry.
Motion carried 6-0.
If you have a B item on the consent agenda, your item has been approved already. The item has been approved. Anyone wishing to testify before the board this morning, please stand and raise your right hand so the clerk can swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Mr. Moretta.
This brings us to item C1. Real Estate Department will present this item and be available for questions. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Michelle Masucci, Land Acquisition Services. Item C1 today is Vacate ID V17-0022. This is a petition by Kay Strother and Vivian Warren to vacate a portion of a platted 10-foot wide utility easement within Lot 1, Block B15, located in the plat of Ravinia Phase 2, as recorded in Plat Book 121, page 35 of the Public Records of Hillsborough County. This petition request is made for the purpose of curing an encroachment created in 2014 by a developer-constructed screen enclosure into the utility easement area. Several similar petitions were submitted in 2017, 5 of which have been presented and approved. The petition was routed to appropriate departments and agencies. There are no objections to the vacation of the utility easement. Staff recommends approval of this petition request.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address item C1? Anyone wishing to address item C1? What's your pleasure? A motion by Commissioner Merman, second by Commissioner Kemp to approve item C1. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried 6-0.
Ms. Moretta.
Next item is C2. Real Estate Department will present this item as well. It's a vacating item.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Alicia Alvarez, Land Acquisition Services. Item C2 today is Vacate V190027. This is a petition by Jorge Luis Alvarez Osorio to vacate a portion of a 7.5-foot platted utility easement within Lot 5, Block 52, plat of Town and Country Park, Unit 21, or number 21, as recorded in Plat Book 41, page 73 of the Public Records of Hillsborough County. This request was originally made to resolve an encroachment created when the petitioner constructed a gazebo within the platted utility easement. During the petition process, it was discovered that a pool, which had been recorded by the property appraiser's office to be in since 1974, is also encroaching in the platted utility easement. Mr. Osorio purchased the property in 2017. This petition, as submitted, would resolve both encroachments. The proposed vacate area is located south of Fountain Avenue and east of Shelton Road in Tampa. The petition was routed to the appropriate departments and agencies, and there are no objections to the vacate of this easement. The staff recommends approval of this petition request.
This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address item C2? Anyone wishing to address item C2? What's your pleasure? Motion by Commissioner Merman, second by Commissioner Kemp to approve item C2. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried 6-0.
Ms. Moretta.
Thank you, Commissioners. That brings us up to a public hearing, E1, personal appearance 19-0729. It's located on the southeast corner of West Shell Point Road and 12th Place Northwest in Ruskin. Commissioners, this is a request to subdivide a unified project. Right now, that unified project has cross-access points in 3 places. The applicant's proposing to separate the unification of 2 parcels and create an area on a PD that will accommodate the development of 2 single-family homes. And in doing that, they're removing the cross-access that was going to function as part of the project located to the west, and they're also providing an access point onto 12th Place that will be only for the 2 lots that are being proposed to be disassembled from that previous project. The site will still have site access on Shell Point for the remainder of the project that's not going to be part of the 2 homes. Brian Grady has a graphic, and he can walk you through those access points where they're being removed, where the access points being added, and how the project is being disassembled from the previous unified project.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brian Grady, Hillsborough County Development Services. The subject parcel is the area outlined in red. The issue with this is part of a larger planned development that runs along Shell Point Road that encompasses this area. This is dealing with cross-access to a parcel right here that's not part of the PD. In 2005, they added cross-access points here in anticipation of developing this as a unified project. Subsequently, it's no longer being developed as a unified project. This parcel has been developed separately with no access along that boundary. Therefore, they're modifying the PD now to remove those 3 cross-accesses, designate this for 2 single-family homes, and add an access point on the 12th Place and Northwest for those 2 single-family homes. Available for any questions.
Applicant.
Good morning. David Wright with TSP Companies. Our address is P.O. Box 1016, Tampa, Florida, 33601. I think the staff did a great job on the staff report, and so did Brian Grady with his explanation. I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify as a proponent? Anyone wishing to testify as a proponent? Let me finish. Anyone wishing to testify as an opponent? Anyone wishing to testify as an opponent? We have a motion by Commissioner Merman.
Second.
Second by Commissioner White to approve item E1, Is there any further discussion? Please call the
I have a
vote.
question.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Smith.
Just a question, in this, the parcel 56384, that's just going to have two houses?
Yes, the portion that's being modified that will take access to 12th will only have two houses, and that access will be limited to only those two houses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Merman, second by Commissioner White to approve item E1. See no further discussion. Please record your vote.
Motion carried 6-0.
Mr. Beretta.
Thank you, Commissioners. That takes us to the second public hearing, E2, personal appearance 19-098. This is located at 2715 West Sligh Avenue on the northwest corner of abandoned Sligh. Project has frontage, obviously, on Sligh. The request is to reduce the approved land uses in this plan development. They want to delete the office and medical use and retain the community residential home. The community residential home will be proposed for 20 beds. It already has an existing permissibility for community residential home. They're also asking to make site plan adjustments along Sligh Avenue to reduce the setback from 20 to 24 feet. They're also asking to increase the building height from 30 feet right now to in 1 story to 34 feet in 2 story. They're also modifying the north setback to reflect inadvertent notation on the site plan to indicate that it's going to be a 25-foot setback, not a 26-foot setback. And also on the west, they're asking for a deck to encroach into a 14-foot setback that will also be over a stormwater area. That deck will be subject to approval of the stormwater review to make sure that the stormwater area will not be affected in any way. Staff is recommending approval of this with conditions.
Applicant.
Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Allison, representing petitioner. I need to be sworn.
Just swear him in, please. Please raise your right hand, sir.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I struggled with traffic this morning, so I apologize. I just made it. This is a relatively simple request, I believe. I'm very happy to represent this client. He and his wife operate several facilities of this kind in the general West Tampa area. They also live in the area. Every place where they operate, neighbors are very satisfied and happy with the degree of maintenance and care that they give to the property and to their clientele. The proposed structure, I think you have in your backup architectural renderings, which we have committed to. I think it's architecturally speaking, it's exceptional quality, and I think will be an asset to the neighborhood. This is a signalized intersection. Property is eligible for commercial entitlements under the location criteria. We think a community residential home is more appropriate use for this site. There's a convenience store at one corner, apartment complex at another. To the north and east of the site is a very well maintained and very closely knit community that's really rather delightful. We have committed to the building elevations, which I believe are part of your packet. I won't show them now, but again, I think the design is exceptional. The only deviation from those elevations to what is ultimately likely to be approved is the elevations portray a lap siding. We're probably going to do stucco for various reasons. Staff has crafted a condition that accurately codifies the architectural requirements. Again, we seek no increase in entitlements. It's currently approved for 20 beds. We're only requesting 20 beds. We just want to provide these clientele with a superior living environment. And the requested height increase is minimal. We respectfully request your approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing. Anyone wish to testify as a proponent? Anyone wish to testify as a proponent? Anyone wish to testify as an opponent? Anyone wishing to testify as an opponent? Applicant waives his time. Motion by Commissioner Merman.
Commissioners, I'm sorry, if I could just make a correction for the record. The applicant had referenced a rendering that would govern the development of this site. Just wanted to clarify that there is not, in fact, a rendering that will govern this, but it's, in fact, Condition 4 that has the architectural standards in it. I believe it's still sufficient, but just wanted to clarify that it's not an actual rendering. It's a textual condition that will govern the construction of the building.
Okay.
Commissioners, also, there has been a change to Condition 1. The condition got inadvertently changed around digitally when we were filing the report. The condition should read, the development shall be limited to a community residential home type C with a maximum of 20 place residents. I believe the applicant agrees with that condition. He's actually the one that informed us of it. And so just wanted to make sure that we have that for the record.
Okay. For the record. I have a motion by Commissioner Merman, second by Commissioner Hagan to approve item E2. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Mr. Moretta.
Next change is E3. It's a public hearing for a personal appearance 19-0937 located at 6511 Lithia Pinecrest, just south of the Fishhawk development. Minor modifications to add cross access and modify the layout of the project, specifically the internal roadway and also the stormwater ponds. Commissioners, when staff reviewed this, we noted several things within the site plan that we worked with the applicant on. Initially, the first thing that we dealt with was the access point on the cross access point that's proposed on the western boundary. Staff wanted to make it clear for the record that that is going to be a cross access point, which means that it can't function as a primary means of access for any adjacent projects. So if that were to occur, then this plan development would have to modify the text that regulates that condition and then be evaluated as to how that access point would function. Additionally, when staff was working through this, we noted for the applicant that the roadways, because of the stormwater pond, were coming closer to the western boundary. Additionally, it was allowing the stacking of lots to occur closer to the trail that exists there and other lots. In working through that, the applicant actually had a neighborhood meeting and also met with staff, and they proposed 7 design changes to the site plan. I want to let Brian Grady walk you through those changes to indicate where they're occurring on the site plan. At the end of the day, staff is recommending approval with conditions. We found the changes to be acceptable and provide an appropriate level of compatibility, and also with the text change for the cross-access point as well, because we felt that was critical. So staff is recommending approval with conditions.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brian Grady, Hillsborough County Development Services. The graphic on the MO right now shows the existing approved site plan and the proposed revisions to it. As you'll notice, the existing one along this boundary, this is the area that was of concern with the existing neighbors to the west.
Hold on. We don't have anything on our screen.
There we go. This graphic is the existing approved site plan, and the graphic on the right is the proposed site plan. Again, the area of concern was primarily with the existing homes along the west. As you can see by this plan, they had retention pond and larger cul-de-sac lots on this area. This plan removes that and provides us a layout for the project. Again, as mentioned by Mr. Moretta, they have made a number of changes to address any compatibility concerns with those lots and the existing trail on the adjacent property, and I'll go through those real quickly. Along Along the southwest boundary in this area, which was based on the neighborhood meeting, there's existing trees, but the understory is, there's not a lot of understory, so there's a lot of exposure there. So the applicant in this area proposed to supplement that with additional plantings and screening to provide a screening opacity of 75%. They also proposed to increase the building setback along this boundary and this boundary from 25 to 55 feet. And this boundary over here where the retention pond, as you see in this area of homes in the trail, there was a retention pond. They've proposed, again, to increase setback from 25 to 55 feet, proposing to maintain existing vegetation and trees along that boundary, and then maintain a curvilinear road to provide offsets and staggering of the building footprints to provide relief along that boundary, so you won't have a uniform building placement along that boundary. They've also proposed a 1 acre park in this area to provide some additional open space for that area. And then along this boundary and this boundary, there's a 30-foot landscape easement currently provided. There's no designation within the conditions about what kind of landscaping can be provided. They've agreed to specify tree plantings, additional tree plantings along this boundary, and also to maintain vegetation here and then supplement that with additional tree plantings to provide additional screening. As mentioned by Mr. Moretta, we are supportive of this and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, applicant.
Good morning, Isabel Albert with Genesis Half. Representing the applicant. Mr. Grady did an excellent job describing the request. This all came about during site engineering. We had to make some adjustment to the layout, which had to move the pond and do some layout to the road. So therefore, when we filed for the application, we were then aware of some neighbors' concerns about their visual impact from their trail. So this is why we're concentrating on these borders to the southwest and to the west. But this neighborhood meeting was successful, and from it, we came about with these additional design requirements. And so we now have their support, and I'm here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Anyone wish to testify as a proponent? Anyone wish to testify as a proponent? Anyone wish to testify? I'm sorry, come forward. Please state your name.
I'm Pamela Jo Hatley. I represent the Fishhawk Trails Homeowners Association. It's a community of over 400 homes. The Fishhawk Trails Homeowners Association had expressed concerns about this development because of their perimeter trail and the proximity to homes that are adjacent to this property. The applicant's most recent site plan and the changes that were described to you this morning have addressed those concerns. And as long as those changes are included as conditions to this approval, the Fishhawk Trails Homeowners Association has no objections to this application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other proponents? Anyone wish to testify as an opponent? Anyone wish to testify as an opponent? Applicant, you waive your time.
Move the item.
I have a motion by Commissioner White, second by Commissioner Merman to approve item E3. Seeing no further discussion.
Wait. I'm in there.
Commissioner Smith, you recognize.
Thank you. So this parcel has an interesting history. Last year, the county, it was kind of controversial over the objections of the Planning Commission and a couple of commissioners. The county gave them 5 times their density outside the urban service area here on Lithia Pinecrest, which is a major traffic problem. And so I think that that this moment offers us a good opportunity to make a bad situation a little better for the traffic on Lithia Pinecrest. Go ahead and put that on the Elmo so you can show what I'm talking about. The cross-access point that they're suggesting adding now will go to this little place on the left, that little place full of trees, sort of a triangle. Yeah, right there. That place is where they're putting a cross-access. That site was owned by the school district. It was given to the school district, I guess, probably by the Fishhawk Trails development, dedicated to the school. So but the applicant just bought it, according to the property appraiser's site, in April. So now they own that, where they're going to put the cross-access to. And the comp plan still says that that site is designated public use for the school. So they're gonna, it seems to me, the proper way of going through this, and I'm not saying it can't ever be done. What I'm saying is, I think we have the cart before the horse, and there's some things that could make it better. So I think they're gonna need a comp plan change. I think they could bring this back as a unified plan to show while you're adjusting the cross-access, while you're adjusting the wetlands in there to make the access different, let's look at the whole big picture and do it in a way that can maybe help the traffic situation. For one thing, they have a cross-access, well, an access point on the very north boundary, yeah, there. But that access point right now is designated to be just maybe an emergency access and doesn't have to be paved. If that could be a real paved access point, along with their access on Lithia Pinecrest, along with this cross-access into this next door parcel, and then we could really see a plan where the whole big picture is with their new addition of that next parcel. Right now, that next parcel, the cross-access is not supposed to be the primary access. It can have its own access onto Lithia Pinecrest. You can have two accesses onto Lithia Pinecrest along that blind curve there. They also have a possible variance built into one of their previous conditions that says they might do a turn lane, you know, for people coming down Lithia Pinecrest from the west and then wanting to turn into their project across traffic, make a left turn to the north into their project. They may or may, they should do a turn lane, but their zoning condition says they may not, they may get a variance for that. So all I'm saying is, I think this, I would make a substitute motion to deny this today so that they can come back and show us what a unified plan with the next, with that parcel that they got, with cross-access, and show us how they're going to help the traffic on Lithia Pinecrest, say that they're not going to be gated, so they will help people get north-south through their parcel from Lithia Pinecrest up to Thompson Road at the north, and avoid some of that. They could help alleviate some of the traffic issues that they have added to. If we deny it today, let them go back and bring this back as one unified plan and show us how they're going to do this whole traffic. Instead of today, what's in front of us is, I like the buffering, sure, for the neighborhood, but this cross-access into this bunch of trees, we don't really see how that's going to be working. Also, by the way, that extra parcel that they got from the school district, they bought it from the school district, it had no density because the density's been stripped off for the fish hawk trails. I think they should bring this all back together and show us what the whole density is going to be, what all the traffic movement's going to be, and consider alleviating the traffic problem by allowing traffic through their parcel from Lithia Pinecrest up to Thompson.
Second.
We have a substitute motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Kemp. Commissioner Smith, are you sure you want to deny this or you want to defer it to another meeting?
Well, I don't think that it can be remanded and do everything I'm asking for.
Commissioners, this is actually a PRS, so this is the first public hearing. It hasn't gone to the zoning hearing master for this modification. If I could address a couple of for the benefit of the board, a couple of the items, the emergency access to the north, that emergency access, it goes to private property. So that's there as a fail-safe, a physical way that somebody can get on the property, but it couldn't be constructed as a full access point because of the intervening private property between this site and Thompson Road. That's on the emergency access piece. On the design exception that was, or the administrative variance it's referenced in the condition, we discussed that. That is something that was a old way of writing those conditions. It is something that's available in the code. I can tell this board that if there's a need for a turn lane there, regardless of that condition, they're going to be held to providing that turn lane at the required length. And I did speak with the applicant, and he's aware that that is our position on that. On the piece to the west, that is currently the subject of a pending zoning. I believe that they are or will be filing a comprehensive plan amendment, so that piece is several actions away from being in a position that it could be part of this PD.
I still think, rather than do this and let them start platting this and developing this while that comes, let's see it all together so we understand the access onto Lithia Pinecrest, if nothing else. Are there going to be two? This one has like 3 possibilities. The other one, is that going to have an extra one? I don't know. Let's see what can be done to alleviate the traffic problem on Lithia Pinecrest, all of a piece, and how the traffic will move through there.
Commissioner Kemp, you recognize.
Thank you. Thank you for your really astute analysis, Commissioner Smith, of this. I was one of the votes against it initially. I can tell you that there was a packed house here also with deep concerns about the traffic issues in that area. And I think anything we can do to try to mitigate the impacts that this piece will have that's outside the urban service area, as you said, 5 times the density that was initially allowed in a place that already has people coming in here ready to be in tears about what the difficulties of making their way through that area, moving at all. So I think anything we can do to look at it in a more comprehensive way and to ask the applicant to come back and really give us a better way to move people and a better way to arrange this, I think would benefit the community in such a way and be so important as we move forward.
Mr. White, you recognize.
Thank you. For the record, I voted against the project originally as well. But commissioners, I'm going to urge you to vote against the substitute motion, and if it fails, to vote in favor of the original motion. This is out in my district. I know the area well. The area to the east has a well-established development pattern of large agricultural rural scale lots. A lot of people in that area live on 5, 10 acre lots, some a little larger. And as much as people complain about the traffic on Lithia Pinecrest Road, these folks with these larger rural scale lots, they would not want this traffic diverted onto Thompson Road through their rural community. That would be problematic in and of itself. If I understand Mr. Gormley correctly, there's some private property issues to the north anyway, so it's not even a guarantee that you could even have road access. But I just think that diverting traffic from a suburban scale subdivision onto the quiet rural road of Thompson Road. Thompson Road really has no connectivity. So, I mean, the traffic's ultimately going to come back to Lithia Pinecrest Road somewhere. I get your point. It would perhaps spread it out away from this blind curve and what have you, but I just don't think that's the solution here. So I'm not going to be able to support the substitute motion.
Commissioner Overman, you recognize.
I'll make this brief, but we are looking at 124 homes. We did hear significant testimony in the earlier hearings as this property was being rezoned. And I do see that there's, access to the north, but it's disingenuous if we can't use it. I mean, why is it there if there's no way to actually use it?
Commissioner, that access that's shown there is an emergency access, and it's something that we require projects to show. So in the event there is a inability to get into or out of the subdivision, there is some physical way that access can be made to the subdivision. That's what that access point is approved for right now.
Well, I appreciate that, I do. And I do appreciate that the land to the east, I guess it is, or the property that actually faces Lithia Pinecrest, purchasing that property to be able to create additional access around that corner is, obviously something that was necessary. Because we have 3 access potentials doesn't mean we'll end up with 3 access potentials on Lithia. So we still have a property that we're approving with 1 way in and 1 way out. And I will continue to say that while it's possible to look for alternatives, we have got to stop approving projects on major roads that are failing or at the brink of failing, where we're designing a project where there's 1 way in and 1 way out. And I recognize that we'll move forward on whatever the decision is today, but I'm going to continue to state that that is a challenge that needs to be addressed by our community and our growth plan. So thank you.
We have a substitute motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Kipp. Mr. Kramer.
Yes, sir. For the record, Jake Kramer, 401 East Jackson Street, Stearns Weaver Miller Law Firm.
Are you willing to defer this and work on this and come back at another date? I don't want to see it go down because the substitute motion is denial. I think it's kind of harsh on you right now.
Commissioner, we're willing to. The struggle that we have right now is this is the first time I've seen that this board has been asking the community, the development community, to put forward cross-access so that we can connect parcels as they develop out over time. And I've never seen that be used as a reason to deny a project. This is a quintessential example of good planning. The record of this hearing has to stand on its own. We recognize there was a lot of controversy, commissioners. That's why we had an additional community meeting. And as you can see, they came out really in support of us here today. So with that, I'll just say we've done our best. We're willing to defer it if that's the pleasure of the board.
Okay, I'm gonna pass the gavel to Mr. Commissioner White and make a motion to defer this until the next meeting. I'm gonna make an amendment to the substitute. When can we defer this to?
The next land use meeting is October 8th.
Okay, I'll make an amendment to the substitute motion to defer this to October 8th.
8th at 9 a.m.
At 9 a.m.
Commissioner, if I may, could I ask for direction of what, we've talked about a lot of things, of what exactly you all would like us to try to do in the interim?
I tell you what, Mr. Kramer, I have the gavel now. I'm gonna turn to, it's okay, I'm gonna turn to Commissioner Miller and ask, since you made the amendment to the motion, is there anything in particular that you'd like to see worked out before it comes back?
If there's something that you and Commissioner Smith can get together and talk about what she's talking about, this access, if we can work that out, fine. If we can't, then come back and we'll see where the vote goes at that particular point in time.
Is this a quasi-judicial proceeding on this particular item?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
I think I can clear it up.
Hold on one moment,
Then you
Commissioner
get with
Smith.
staff. Get with Mr. Moretta and Mr. Gormley, whomever, to discuss what's on the board, what's on the table right now, and try to work that out. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be denied today, and I don't think you want that denial on your record.
I agree.
Okay, Commissioner Smith.
Right, and I'm not suggesting that this whole thing doesn't happen in the end, all right? So I think a deferral is appropriate is fine at this step, but what I'm what I think would really be, what I'm really looking for is for this whole thing to come back as a unified plan, so we understand how is the cross-access between the two parcels going to work with whatever access there is on Lithia Pinecrest, with whatever turn lanes you're willing to commit to, with no caveats about variances. How, what can you do to help traffic on Lithia Pinecrest in the big picture? Not just like, well, we'll do a stub out to the trees now, and then you'll come back with this other piece later. Let's see the whole big picture and do the best you can with everything you've got to make this the best it can be for the traffic on Lithia Pinecrest. I really would hope that there is some other access to other parcels around, other projects around that would help connect the grid, add to connectivity. But even failing that, let's don't do this piecemeal, is all I'm saying. And when you bring back the best that can be done for Lithia Pinecrest, I'm not going to be standing in the way.
Okay,
So,
and I have an idea in the end, but I see that Commissioner Merman's in the queue. So Commissioner Merman, I'm gonna call on you first.
I'd rather hear your idea first.
Well, my idea is just simply that, comprehensive plan amendments, that's a legislative process. So maybe you can, use the fact that that's a legislative process to give Commissioner Smith an idea of how this might look in the end. It might not have quite the specificity or finality that she's looking for, but it might be enough to give her some peace of mind if she understands, what might be sought in terms of a comp plan amendment. It's just an idea, but,
Yes, there is I believe the comprehensive plan has had a pre-submitting meeting and scheduled for October 1st submittal. Is that correct? So that would mean that plan amendment will be coming to this board sometime in the earlier part of next year. We do have an idea of what they're seeking and what that would mean if that was approved and rezoned, on how those two projects would work together. I'd also.
So maybe you can just brief Commissioner Smith and talk with her about that, before, ahead of it coming back for the deferral.
We certainly can do that and can meet and brief the commissioner and understand any other specificity that you may have on the plans, and we can work with the applicant to try to get that addressed.
Okay, Commissioner Merman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't going to say anything on this because I didn't think it was going to be a problem. I'll just, restate the history of this project. This project has already been approved. We are looking at modifications. Okay, it's been approved. So if we don't approve, like if we denied these modifications today, can they just move forward with the plan as it was?
Yes, they do have an approved zoning
Okay.
that they can.
So I'm just saying, you all, they're trying to make it better. And actually, they can, if we don't let them do anything today, they will just move forward with their plan. Yes, they can. I mean, I don't know what we can do to stop them. Is that true?
Commissioners, they do have zoning currently. They have a plan development approval that they could develop under today if they so chose. It wouldn't encompass these modifications, but they do have an approved PD zoning that they could move forward.
So, I mean, I'm just saying that I understand everybody's sensitivity about this parcel. Okay, I get it. And the reason I voted for the original plan was project when it was approved, because I listened to the landowner, the 86-year-old man, who had been duped by county employees back in the 1980s that changed his zoning without his knowledge. And that was wrong, dead wrong. And we had to right a wrong. And I'm just saying that I think, I get what you're trying to do, Commissioner Smith, but I think what is going to happen is they can't do a holistic project because it involves other private landowners, and they may not want anything to do with any further access or improvement to Thompson Road. Thompson Road, I know Thompson Road, and I tell you, these people are not going to be happy that own those parcels on by and near Thompson Road, if that is. So I completely agree with Commissioner White, but I think I just want to try and put an understanding forward that, yeah, you cannot approve these modifications today, but the modifications were to only make the project better. And so that's all I really wanted to say.
Commissioner White, I'm going to withdraw my amendment. I'm just going to vote against the substitute.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And if I may,
Commissioner Smith, you recognize.
thank you. They now own the parcel that they're talking about making connectivity to. I'm only asking that since they are eventually going to be, the thing before us today is to connect to the parcel that they own, okay? And since they are going to be developing these both, let's see it all as a piece. I think that's the better way to handle this and to understand how the connectivity, while they're working on adjusting the connectivity, while they're moving the lots around and the roads around, let's look at the whole thing. That's all I'm saying. All together as a piece, so we understand and can all work on the issues on Lithia Pinecrest from both the parcels that they own.
Okay, we have a substitute motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Kemp. Seeing no further discussion, vote on the substitute motion.
Motion failed 3 to 4. Commissioner Hagan, Commissioner Miller, Commissioner Merman, and Commissioner White voted no.
Okay. It didn't display on the board. He just shot us. Okay. We're now back on the original motion of approval by Commissioner White, second by Commissioner Merman. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried. Motion carried 5 to 2. Commissioner Kemp, Commissioner Smith voted no.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Moretta.
This brings us to E4. This is a public hearing, personal appearance 19-1094. This is located at 3409 West Kenyon Avenue. That area of land is just east of Himes and south of Bush Avenue. Specifically, this parcel has frontage on 3 streets. The street to the south is Kenyon, the street to the north is Colwell Avenue, and the street to the east is High Street. Commissioners, the applicant is requesting to increase the rear yard setback from 10 to 15 feet along a folio that resides on the west side of the north part of the property. They're increasing that setback next to adjacent proposed development. The site is also reducing the front yard setback from 25 feet to 20 along Colwell and reducing the front yard setback along High Street from 25 to 15. Staff is recommending approval of the adjustment to the envelope for the site. Brian Grady also has a graphic if you'd like to see that. If not, we can move forward to the applicant's presentation. Staff is recommending approval with conditions.
Anyone want to see the graphic? Don't worry about it. Applicant?
Good evening, board members. Excuse me, good morning, board members. Michael Warner, 14502 North Dale Mabry Highway, Tampa 33618, representing the client and the applicant. Fairly straightforward, board members. This is a request to actually correct a representation made by a prior representative to the northwestern existing multifamily development. Talked to Mr. Don Gant, who is the president, and they agreed that we agreed to a 15-foot setback. Our plans were approved at 10, so we're actually correcting that and increasing it. We were stopped mid-plan review on the county's plan review process 4 months ago because they did not feel we had adequate separation between sidewalk and garage. So we have to decrease the setbacks on Cole and decrease the setback on High, increase the setback next to existing residential. Staff's recommending approval. We have no opposition. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Anyone wish to testify as a proponent? Anyone wish to testify as a proponent? Anyone wish to testify as an opponent? Hold on. Yes, are you opponent? Opponent? Come forth and state your name, sir.
I think the gentleman here quoted my name. He said, Don Gant. I'm Randy Gant. I'm a homeowner, 8703 Sleepy Oak Place, Big Oak Reserve. I'm also one of the officers of the Homeowners Association. We've been there quite a while, and I did speak to him, and at the time thought that our homeowners association would be in favor of it. We've had homeowners meetings since then, and they wanted to clarify on their behalf. The president could not be here, had an emergency this morning. I talked to him this morning, but our homeowners association hasn't met. And let me make this statement to you. We're concerned a little bit about the setback. We have cooperated. We knew that property would be developed. They have worked with us and communicated with us very well, so we feel good about that. But our concern after our meeting was, came up with several of the homeowners, and my home specifically borders that property, so I kind of confirm what they're saying. Our concern, not necessarily density, that's been a little bit of a problem, but we knew we'd probably have to live with that. We were concerned a little bit about traffic. We know we've had trouble with Twin Pines and Colwell in the past, so there's a lot of traffic issues, but that's on you guys to have to deal with, and we did feel like we conceded that. But our main concern was water. If the setback is not adequate, certain times of the year we have water standing in our backyards, and so if water and retention and movement of water away from the property, the buildings they're building is not adequately addressed, we're concerned about an excess of water on property also coming into our property and not being addressed in an appropriate way. So if the setbacks are lessened or not appropriate, we have some concerns about that. And like I said, they've been genuine with us, have been talking to us, so we appreciate that. But we do want to make that opposition that we really want the water addressed in a healthy way for all concerned.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to testify as an opponent? Yes, sir. Please come forward and state your name. You have 12 minutes and 57 seconds.
Thank you. My name is Thomas Maloof. I'd like to get a clarification, if I could, on the setback on the west side of the project. Do I ask him or ask the
staff?
The west side has a setback reduction from 15 feet to 10 feet along folio 24720.02. I mean, sorry, it's an increase. They're decreasing the frontage on along the streets, and they're increasing the setback where the folio is on the west. On the western property line, the setback's increasing.
Okay. It was, before the increase, it was set at 10? Is that the question? That's correct.
10 to 15 feet is going from 10 to 15.
I thought the normal setbacks were 20 feet.
This is a planned development, and the current rear yard setback is 10 feet.
I don't know how that happened. I never saw that one. I was here a couple of weeks ago with the stormwater situation. And if you got these properties on top of each other, now this, it's a better for us. I'm in Big Oak Reserve Condo Association, which is adjacent to this on the west side. And I was afraid the water was coming over to our property, which it is doing on the north of a project they're doing now, northwest. They got several acres in there. They got a funny shaped piece of property going. And I was just concerned about where the water was going with their development, overloading the development of the land. And I guess I'm against it. I don't understand how this got turned around backwards. I apologize. But the original setbacks were 20, and you're telling me it was set at 10, and now they're trying to go to 15 on the west side.
Correct, and they're also retaining a 10-foot buffer within the setback, and the buffer is an inactive area of the site.
I don't know why it wasn't 20 in the first place. I don't know how that got passed. Even the planned development, all setbacks are 20 feet.
It's not an addition. It's not an addition. It's a 10-foot buffer within a 10-foot setback. So it's not additional. It's within.
You know, that goes back to the problems of stormwater. I'm in favor of going to 15 feet. I'd like to see you go to 20 feet, but I don't know how I got past the 10 feet. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, could you restate your last name? I don't think we caught it.
Maloof, M-A-L-O-U-F. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak as an opponent? Anyone else as an opponent? Applicant, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Don't mean to create more confusion. Let me try to be clear. It was approved in 2017 for 10-foot western setback continuously. These are fee simple, single-family, attached townhome units. While we were in the middle of the platting process, the county already accepted the plat, approved it. Then on the site review plans, the county engineer said, gosh, it looks like a little tight between the sidewalk and the garage areas. Therefore, we want additional separation for safety and maneuverability. That gave us a lot of compression issues. We had to seek that relief along Cowell Avenue to the north, which is across from a 3-story office complex, hundreds of feet away, and it's across from a 3-story multifamily Carrollwood Station project east of High Street. So that's where we decreased. We're not changing the buffer. Mr. Gant, Randy Gant, and I spoke several weeks ago, and he said, I just want to make sure you are not changing those plans. We agreed to 15 feet. Lo and behold, we went down to the county, talked to our case planner, pulled out all the transcripts and the minutes, and we went, it's actually approved for 10 feet. So I filed for the relief to increase their setback along their property to give them additional protection. On the stormwater, all these buildings are on the perimeter. The stormwater ponds are internal, so all the stormwater drains into our property. None of that stormwater is going to impact off-site. It can't impact that off-site. We've already had our drainage plans approved. We want to give them that assurance. So we have a replacement of a fence, we have our own buffer and our own trees and our own vegetation. So we think it's a good project. I'm sorry for any confusion on their part. We're actually increasing that setback on the west. Thank you.
Thank you. What's your pleasure? Motion by Commissioner Merman. Second by Commissioner Overman to approve item E4. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried 6 to 1. Commissioner Hagan voted no.
Okay, Mr. Moretta.
Ready, Michelle? Thank you, Commissioners. This brings us up to G1 on the regular agenda. There is oral argument filed for this case, if you'd like to move for that now.
I have a motion to open for oral argument. Motion by Commissioner Merman, second by Commissioner White to open for oral argument. See no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7 to 0.
Mr. Moretta.
Commissioners, we're going to load up a graphic on the overhead. I will tell you that this is a request for a plan development. It's located in the Waimama Community Plan. It's currently has zoning which permits AR, which is 1 unit per 5 acres, and a small piece of AS1, which permits 1 unit per acre. It involves 2 sites. It involves a sending site, and it involves a receiving site. Michelle is pointing to both, at this point she's pointing to the receiving site. The sites are, the sending site is 173 acres, and the receiving site is 418 acres. It involves a density transfer from the sender to the receiver, and it involves a total of 1,047 dwelling units and permissibility for a school. The site is being rezoned to implement the Waimama Village Community Plan standards. Staff is recommending approval with conditions. The conditions also contain a requirement for deed restriction on the sending site, which will end up with 1 unit after the density transfer, to require that be maintained in that configuration. Staff is recommending approval with conditions.
Applicant. You have 10 minutes.
Good morning, Cammie Corbett with the law firm of Hill Ward Henderson here representing Eisenhower Property Group this morning. We filed for oral argument to address three primary issues. One, we wanted to provide a clear and concise summary of the project's compliance with the Waimama Community Plan in the WVR2 plan category. And we wanted to discuss the differences between the zoning hearing master's recommendation and staff's recommendation, and then lastly to discuss some procedural and process issues. And so with that, I'd like to begin by asking Isabel Albert, our case planner, to provide the planning overview.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Isabel Albert with Genesis Ave, 1000 North Ashley Street. I'd like to move over to the Elmo, please. Thank you. All right, so thank you. So here's the site. Unlike the other site that you heard last month, this site has direct access on US 301 over here. It's located right south of the Sun City Center, which is built out. And over here, there's Vista Palms, which is a development under development, and also a South Shore Bay over here, which is under development. So as staff stated, this site is located within the Waimama Community Plan. It has a future land use of WVR2, which is the Waimama Village Plan. It also includes a transfer of development right. This is from the Bullfrog Creek over here, which is a sending area, and it's transferring units to the Berry Bay receiving area. The WVR2 allows 2 units per acre as long as there's a clustering of 3.5 dwelling units per acre on a minimum of 10 acres. And so this transfers a development right of 211 units to the receiving area. And I'm going to go through quickly the requirements. Oh, thank you. First and foremost is the clustering of 2 dwelling units per acre, and which is provided over here. This clustering is not only, it's to avoid sprawl, and so this is what we're providing. The second is also the minimum of the 40% of contiguous open space, which includes parks, wetlands, ELOP properties, and other such, and it to have a interconnection with other open space and conservation area. And then, which we have over here, we have to the south, we have the ELOP property, and to the west, we have the Little Manatee State Park. The clustering also is for resulting in a development that is sensitive to natural habitat. The third requirement is the providing every 1,320 feet some kind of through roads, access road, and internally to not have more than 50% of cul-de-sac, which we meet. The fourth is a mixed-use provision permitting for a school site. Over here, we have the allowance to allow a school site, and this was with discussion with the school board, staff, and also they required to have a mix of housing type, which we provide over here, which includes townhomes, single family, and multifamily units. And lastly is the requirements to be on water and sewer with the clustering, so the developer will have to provide the sewer system and the public water system. Now, while we went through this process, it's been about a year, we went through different designs, but throughout the whole time, we were considerate of the internal neighbors over here. So we've tried to minimize the impact by providing all the green space around it and just minimal impact over here. With that, we meet all the requirements of the Waimama Community Plan, the WVR2 requirements. We do have a tracking mechanism as required, which is in the conditions. And I'm here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Still have 5 minutes and 35 seconds.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to move to the discussion about the differences between the zoning hearing master recommendation and the staff's recommendation. The important thing to note is that all recommendations are for approval of this rezoning. And the fundamental differences between the staff's report and the zoning hearings master's report are found in 2 conditions. Condition number 13, which relates to the conservation easement or the deed restriction on the sending property. Staff had requested that that be in the form of a conservation easement. The applicant originally objected to that language. The hearing master found in favor of the applicant on that issue. However, after reading through that language more carefully and discussing it with my client is okay with accepting staff's version of condition 13. The other relates to condition 26, which deals with the job opportunities that need to be in place at the time of development. The staff had included a condition in condition number 26 that provided that in order, before the developer could plat above 663 units, that they had to demonstrate that additional job opportunities were available. The applicant objected to that condition. The zoning hearing master agreed that that should not be a requirement. But if the board is so inclined to approve staff's recommendation, that is acceptable to my client. We think that both recommendations are supported by the substantial competent evidence in the record and are approvable this morning. That brings me to the last issue I wanted to talk to you about is some of the procedural issues and the process issues. With the exception of Mr. Smith, who is a direct adjacent neighbor who Ms. Albert explained to you we tried to be mindful of when we were designing our site plan, all of the parties of record in opposition expressed they were passionate advocates who feel very strongly that the Board of County Commissioners should move to change their regulations and a comprehensive plan to minimize the impacts of development in the area. But the case law is very well established that those generalized opinions without more do not constitute substantial competent evidence that can be used as a basis for denial. And with that, I'd like to just close with saying that the applicant has satisfied its burden to establish that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the land development code, and request your approval this morning. And I'd like to reserve any time that I might have for rebuttal, and we're here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. We're now moving to oral arguments, which is to those persons that are party of record. In support, Maryland Alderman. We have a total of 10 minutes per side. Good morning. Please state your name.
Good morning. My name is Marilyn Alderman. Do I need to give you my address? I don't. At the other meeting we did. I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you. I'm a multi-generational Hillsborough Countian. My family came here in 1848. Our family has been active in the agriculture and educational world here in Hillsborough County all of my life. I attended Waimama Elementary School and was always proud to see my grandfather's name on the cornerstone of that building. Waimama, when I was a child, was a vibrant community, and I loved being there, always felt safe. I think that time has come for southeastern Hillsborough County to be developed with well-planned housing developments, which will have a positive impact to the area. It will provide well-paying jobs, schools, parks, all kinds of things, and you know that your job better than I do. So I want to thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this morning, and I look hopefully forward to you approving this zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Stop the clock there. Okay. Michael L. Peterson. Ms. Logan, would you please review that?
I'm not going to grab it till she says it's okay.
Which one is which? She's reviewing this handout to see if it's in compliance.
You may proceed. I've confirmed Mr. Peterson's documents in the record.
Proceed, Mr. Peterson.
Good morning. Michael Peterson, appearing as one of the actual participants in the Wiamama Community Plan's creation and offering what we submitted to the ZHM on behalf of myself, Travis Council, and Pat Council, who are also fellow participants. We are in support of this application on its merits, but we do oppose Condition 26. We again contend that the planning staffs are implementing incipient policy never developed through proper processes such as public notice, public input, or any public hearings. More than a decade has passed with nothing said of this new interpretation that came out of the Planning Commission, creating a retail jobs concurrency requirement before a residential zoning can even be considered. Over a decade passed with no prior Wiamama rezonings facing this interpreted requirement, as again found by the zoning hearing master based on competent substantial evidence not refuted by the Planning Commission staff with competing evidence. Well, they tried to claim such, but a review of the transcripts from prior zoning showed that this had not been applied. Tracking charts that have been waved around as if they've been in place for a long time, they haven't. Those are recent creations actually developed by the applicants in the recent rezonings. Similarly, based on substantial competent evidence not refuted, the hearing master found, quote, a requirement that employment and services criteria must be in existence to support a new residential PD approval does not exist within the comprehensive plan and was not intended by the text of the plan. So why such findings beyond the proof that was provided at the hearing? Because one would have to believe that the landowner participants who already enjoyed RP2 plan designations, where they controlled the creation of retail and jobs on their own property, would have decided to trade that for this new WVR2 interpretation, whereby they would have to develop these new retail and job requirements on property and they don't control in downtown Wiamama. They would do so in competition with existing businesses there, when in fact the intent of the plan was to help the existing businesses of downtown Wiamama. And they would have to do all that before they could even qualify to apply for a rezoning, a residential rezoning, that they probably might not get approved if it's not politically popular. You really can't believe that was the bargain that the participants took or went into to create the community consensus that came to the approval of this community plan. It did not happen. And it is not a workable market philosophy to require commercial development before necessary rooftops providing consumers can be considered. Frankly, it's absurd. However, this policy 48.1 of unknown origin can be reconciled as a mere planning guideline for assessing plan evolution as already underway with the Wiamama Now downtown planning effort you all have heard about. What the hearing master did not address is how staff now tries to salvage this interpretation by crediting applicants with Wiamama's existing retail and jobs, even if those credits may exist by virtue of efforts of other landowners unaware of this surprise policy. Council growers, Deal Farms, and other participants in the community plan's creation are now disadvantaged by this surprise policy being implemented on a first-come, first-served basis. This is wrong. Grant this application its earned approval as the merits as reported by the zoning hearing master report show it is approvable. But also you need to specifically reject the Planning Commission staff's new interpretations of policy 48.1 as improper and unsubstantiated policy. These policy guidelines, these planning guidelines were never treated as regulatory before, and they cannot be found as part of the earliest community plan publications because they were never part of its creation. No actual proof has been provided otherwise despite months of controversy. Think about that. This has been going on for months and has been through multiple hearings, and yet there's been no evidence brought forward by the author of this interpretation or others to specifically show that this was developed as part of the plan and how it has been supposedly considered or implemented all along.
You got 2 people to follow you. You're
Okay.
out of time.
So that should tell you something about its basis. Again, we're supportive of this, but not the new interpretation basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Clay Taylor. We have 2 speakers. You have 3 minutes and 43 seconds.
My name is Clay Taylor, and I'm in favor of this development. There are 1,000 people moving to Florida each day, and growth is inevitable in Florida and Hillsborough County. And the property directly to the north of this, the Lennar development, is almost built out. So we need this property. It's in the direct path of growth. There's also about 3,000 acres across 301 that's owned by Hillsborough County, the state, and the Water Management District that can't be developed. So this property is needed for smart growth. The capital that will flow in because of this development will help local farmers and businesses immensely. The Eisenhower Property Group is a great company with a lot of experience in Hillsborough County, and they'll do a fantastic job. I believe a yes vote is apparent now. Thank you.
Thank you. Gigi Taylor. Please state your name. You have 2 minutes and 46 seconds.
Yes, sir. I'll be very quick. My name's Gloria Alderman Taylor, 509 Donnell Street, Lakeland, Florida. Good morning, Commissioners. I am certainly in favor of this project. I was in attendance last month in the August 13th County Commission meeting when Commissioner Miller made a very wise statement regarding growth in southern Hillsborough County. Respectfully, I would like to quote him from that meeting. Commissioner Miller said, and I quote, "We can't stop it from coming. We are not going to build a wall to stop it." End of quote. My hope today is that you'll keep that statement in mind in our proceedings. Thank you so much.
Thank you. In opposition, 10 minutes in opposition. Merle Berg. Merle Berg, B-E-R-G. Ronnie Smith. You have 10 minutes, sir.
My name is Ronnie Smith. I live at 3537 Ed Lane. When the young lady was showing the thing up there, I'm one of the homes that's in the middle of that subdivision and stuff. We're not against subdivisions out in Waimama. We don't have no problem with them, tell you the truth, as long as they match our community. This development does not match our community. I have over 150 signatures saying that it does not. Everybody out there does not want this. So I asked them, I said, let's come up with a compromise where everybody will be happy. And so what we came up with is instead of 4 homes to an acre, why can't they put 1 to 2 homes to an acre and we can still be rural? My question to this committee today is, where can we live in the people in Waimama, where can we live today and still be rural and not have a subdivision pop up in our face? Because that's what's going to happen. They're going to put a fence completely around my property. I have a 30-foot right-of-way going out of my property. I have 3 deer that come up on my property at night. I have bobcats that come up on my property chasing rabbits and everything. I went to the people. I spent a week and a half walking around my neighborhood on Saffold Road and Bonita. The people on Bonita don't even know that the subdivision was there. They don't even know because it was never posted. We got people over there that just bought property. My neighbor bought property 2 years ago.
Excuse me, sir. Mr. Smith, you're going to need to speak to what you spoke about at the zoning hearing master meeting. Anything outside of that, any additional facts cannot be brought into the discussion at this time. So please speak to the same.
Well, what do you want me to say?
You can speak to the zoning hearing master's recommendation or any of the topics that you spoke about during the zoning hearing master meeting.
Well, all I can say is we the people of Waimama, us little people, we ain't big farmers like they are. We didn't come here in 1800 and buy all the land and everything. We bought little chunks of land, and all we want to do is survive. That's all we want to do. We just want to have a life of our own ourselves, you know, but we don't want a subdivision popped up in our face and everything, you know. I mean, we're willing to compromise with these people, but, you know, it ain't going to work, you know. So it sounds like they've already got it in the bag already, and there ain't nothing we can do about it, you know. All the little people, they just get stuck, and the big farmers, they just keep getting richer and richer and everything like that. You know, no wonder why the old timers, go out to Wimauma and see how many old timers you have that started that community and see how many of them are still there. When I went around, people were buying property out of Florida because they don't want to be in a subdivision. Thank you.
Applicant, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you. And I just want to make a point of clarification about the proposed density. Mr. Smith just indicated that he thinks residential density to 1 to 2 units an acre would be appropriate. That is the type of density that we're proposing. And in fact, you know, I think with the substantial competent evidence in the record supports an approval of 663 dwelling units, regardless of how you condition it. And you don't have to resolve the issues that Mr. Peterson was seeking to have you resolve today to approve that. You can either approve with the zoning hearing master's recommendation, you can approve with staff's condition, which allows for additional job opportunities to be provided at the time of platting, or you can approve that the 663 units are all that are available today because that's what's at the time of rezoning. All of those are approvable options. If you were to take the last option, the approximate density would be about 1.5 units to the acre. And so we would be addressing those concerns. And I think what I would like to do at this time, again, is ask that you move for approval, but I do have rebuttal time, but I do have concerns that there may be substantive issues that may be raised by the members of the board that maybe weren't addressed in the record, and I'd like the opportunity, if those substantive issues come up, to be able to have our experts address those issues.
I'll take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Planning Commission staff.
Thank you. Melissa Leinhard, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located in the Wimauma Village Residential Future Land Use category. It is in the rural area and within the limits of the Wimauma Community Plan. The application is proposed furthers a number of goals, objectives, and policies within the comprehensive plan, including future land use element and the livable communities element. The applicant is requesting a planned development of 2 non-contiguous sites by utilizing a transfer of development rights to develop a maximum of 1,047 residential units with a school site. Consistent with transfer of development policy 32.10, the applicant is leaving behind the required development rights on the sending site. The applicant is meeting the clustering requirement as outlined in policy 48.1 of the future land use element, as well as meeting the intent of policy 48.2 by providing a residential support use and various housing types. The applicant has reserved 168.4 acres of the site, meeting the open space requirements as prescribed in the WVR2 future land use category. To ensure a balanced transportation system, the applicant is providing through streets along the outside portions of the existing platted areas adjacent to their site. The applicant is also providing open space as a focal point of each pocket of residential development, and each of these site design components meet the vision of the Wimauma Community Plan. The application has also been reviewed by the Hillsborough County School Board. The applicant has dedicated a potential 25-acre school site on the site plan. This meets the intent of the Wimauma Village Community Plan, which states that residential projects with 50 or more units should consult with the school district regarding potential school sites. Policy 48.1 of the future land use element states that in order to achieve densities in excess of 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres in the WVR2 future land use category, developments shall achieve the minimum clustering ratios, job opportunity provisions, and shopping provisions. It has been the interpretation of the Planning Commission staff and subsequently reiterated by the board at your meeting last month that this policy indicates that employment and services need to be in existence to support new residential development. The applicant completed an analysis to identify the non-residential entitlements located within the Wimauma Community Plan boundary. Through this analysis, it was discovered that there are adequate commercial square footage within the community plan boundary to meet 75% of the needed household services to support the number of requested residential units and the ones that are being proposed. 75% of the needed household services equates to 28,269 square feet of commercial land uses. Per the same policy, 48.1 of the future land use element, employment and service requirements shall be met to receive in excess of 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres. After numerous meetings with the applicant and development services staff, Planning Commission staff is moving forward with the same analysis utilized during the previous 2 WVR2 rezoning applications. And this interpretation is that the employment and service requirement numbers were formulated using the square footage of existing non-residential from the entire community plan boundary, not solely just from the WVR2 future land use boundary. Planning Commission staff and the applicant completed individual analyses using the Hillsborough County property appraisers' currently built square footages of non-residential uses within the entire plan boundary. The 2 previous rezonings accounted for approximately 1,427 jobs from the industrial, West End, and downtown districts. The remaining 270 jobs located in the 3 districts would accommodate a portion of the number of jobs that are required per policy 48.1. Other than the non-residential square footages that have been identified within those districts, there is a total of 113,553 square feet of non-residential square footage outside of that boundary. This equates to a total of 276 jobs. Assumptions and further calculations are listed in the same objective from the future land use element. In order to support the proposed number of requested residential units, there would need to be 869 jobs located within the community plan boundary. The current non-residential square footages from the West End District, the Waimama Village downtown, and the Light Industrial Office District, and existing square footage outside of those districts equate to 546 jobs. This equates to 663 homes that can be supported at this time. A condition has been put in place to ensure that the non-residential square footage is present at the time of plat approval to support the remaining 384 homes that the applicant is requesting. At that time, the applicant will have to provide evidence that there is sufficient non-residential square footage present in order to move forward with the platting process. This condition is consistent with policy direction 48.1, policy 48.1 of the future land use element. To ensure that tracking of the commercial is completed in a uniform manner, job requirements will be assigned specific folios that accommodate the amount of commercial square footage needed to meet the job requirement, which would meet the intent of the language in the future land use element regarding approvals and tracking. Also, to meet the vision of the community plan, the tracking will capture the jobs within the downtown area first, and then capture jobs from outside that prescribed area. Additionally, Planning Commission staff, as part of the review of this application, reviewed previous testimony from the adoption of the Waimama Community Plan, testimony from previous zoning hearing master meetings, as well as testimony from the Board of County Commissioners land use meetings of other WVR2 rezonings to clarify the intention of the comprehensive plan language. Specifically, research was done to evaluate whether the intent of the WVR2 requirements is to ensure that non-residential square footages are present at the time of rezoning to support the amount of residential units being proposed, or if the comprehensive plan language is intended to simply direct commercial development within the downtown with no timing mechanism. Based upon the aforementioned analysis and research, as well as adopted comprehensive plan language, Planning Commission staff has made an interpretation that all non-residential entitlements need to be present to move forward with platting approval. At last month's Board of County Commissioners land use meeting, the board concurred with the Planning Commission's interpretation. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed development consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the conditions proposed by the Development Services Department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Zoning hearing master.
The zoning hearing master considered the applicant's request to rezone approximately 591 acres, which includes a combined sending and receiving areas from agricultural rural to, and AS1, agricultural single family, to a planned development under the terms of the Waimama Village Residential to future land use category that provides for an allowable transfer of development rights. The project consists of 2 non-contiguous sites that will allow the transfer of density of 211 units consistent with the WVR2 plan provisions between the sending site and the receiving site. The receiving site is proposed to allow 1,047 residential units with the permissibility for a public school. The transfer of development rights standards require that the sending site not be left with less acreage than needed for the development of one dwelling unit that has been reserved. The zoning hearing master considered the record and found that the applicant has demonstrated that the development, providing a clustering ratio of 4.19, which is in excess of the minimum clustering ratio of 3.5, complies with the applicable WVR2 comprehensive plan policies. The applicant is clustering residential units in order to achieve densities in excess of one dwelling unit to 5 gross acres, as well as providing a residential support use, which meets the intent of policy 48.1 and 48.2 of the future land use element. As you heard, the Planning Commission presented a report that interprets that the Wamama Village Residential 2 category requires employment and services to exist to support new residential development pursuant to policy 48.1. While you've heard the Planning Commission interpretation, and there was action taken to confirm that interpretation at last month's meeting, the zoning hearing master did differ with that in this particular consideration of rezoning at 19-102. However, the zoning master did note that the Planning Commission has found that the employment and service criteria are met for up to 663 homes related to the subject application, as well as for the prior rezonings in the residential, the Wamama Village Residential 2 category. Staff's recommended condition number 26 will ensure that non-residential square footage is present at the time of plat approval to support the remainder 384 proposed homes requested by the applicant. The zoning hearing master considered the entirety of the record and found that overall the proposed rezoning would allow for development that is compatible with the existing and planned development pattern found in the surrounding area and consistent with the comprehensive plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, including the Wamama Village Community Plan, and recommended approval.
Thank you. Commissioner Overman, you recognize.
This is a challenging project. I actually like the way it's laid out, and I like the green space. I like the way it's divided up. However, at the August 13th land use meeting, the board adopted an interpretation of the Planning Commission in regards to the employment and services requirements in section of Objective 48 of the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan as it relates to the Wamama Village Residential 2 employment and shopping requirements. As such, I do take issue with the condition 26 of the staff report that was prepared on July 29th, 2019, which was created prior to our decision clarifying our position on the Wamama Village Plan. I find that condition to be inconsistent with our decision as the developer cannot show any future employment opportunities presently that would permit them to build the requested 1,047 residential units. Per the staff report, the applicant can only demonstrate sufficient commercial capacity in the Wamama Village downtown for 663 residential units. It is my belief that the interpretation of the plan that this development is not ripe for the development, as there are insufficient number of job opportunities for the number of residential units being currently proposed. An applicant is not entitled to a partial amount of residential units. Rather, they must wait until the Wamama Village downtown has been developed and grown to support the full amount of development requested. In summary, I do not agree with the proposed condition 26 that would meet the requirements of RP2 future land use category, and therefore I would move for denial.
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Overman, second by Commissioner Smith for denial. Commissioner Smith, you recognize.
Thank you. Yes, the Wamama Community Plan is quite clear. I sat in on several meetings that they wanted residential development to occur concurrently with jobs, And otherwise, you would end up with big subdivisions way out past Waimama, full of commuters driving through Waimama, through Sun City, through Riverview to get to the jobs and services in Tampa and Brandon, and that's called sprawl. This is a big piece of sprawl. They've taken the maximum density you could possibly wring out of the RP2 conditions anywhere without considering any mitigating circumstances that might reduce the density from the maximum. They've taken the density from 2 parcels, from a parcel far north of here, the maximum density. And by the way, if we approve this today, we would be approving the maximum density on the other parcel that is being transferred to here. And then all that density is put on this parcel. And the gentleman who is in the middle of this property, who is about to have, who is threatened by having a whole subdivision put around him, he understands this better than the land use attorney described it. She is saying it's 2 per acre, but that's not what it's going to feel like to this gentleman when he has 1,000 and some odd houses, many of which are on 40-foot wide lots, 50-foot wide lots. Those are going to feel like an urban subdivision all around him. So this is premature according to our comp plan policy 2.1 and 33. Objective 33 for planned villages says there are several areas of the county which are located outside the urban service area limits, but may, not shall, may be appropriate for up to 2 units per acre development sometime in the future. However, Hillsborough County will not be planning or programming infrastructure to serve these areas within the planning horizon of the whole comp plan. The capital costs associated with the provision of infrastructure needed to serve these planned villages must be provided by the developer, or such a project will not be funded by Hillsborough County. So that brings me to the connectivity, which policy 33.11 says, achieving adequate road connectivity is a high priority in areas designated RP2. When we're supposed to decide if the timing is right to grant RP2 a density in these areas, achieving adequate road connectivity is a high priority. And they'll be designed to the greatest extent possible to connect roadways shown on the transportation corridor plan map. Well, all this connects to is a little bit of 301, okay? They have 2 access points onto Saffold Road, which is substandard and gonna be in trouble. The school is up there by close to 301 and Saffold. All these 1,000 something houses, they're not gonna be connected to anything but 301. The stub outs that are going to the north, just like you were worried about on the previous one, those go to private property. They go to places where there is not enough right-of-way for roads. There's not enough right-of-way for any roads to the north. There's no way that this parcel with all its 1,000-something houses is going to be connected to anything to the north. It's not going to be connected to the east because those theoretical connection points go straight to a TICO easement. That's not a road. So there's not a road to the east, there's not a road to the north. This is like an island with everything pouring out onto 301 past that school site. And that'll be the connection for the school. That's a priority for determining whether to grant RP2 density. It's finally incompatible. We get to decide with testimony from the neighborhood and our own understanding from the neighborhood and all the, there is some other comment in the case file about what is compatible with the surrounding area. This is way out in the rural area. It's not compatible with the development that surrounds it, and it's certainly not compatible with the property owners who are in the middle of it. It's not compatible with their property, and it's not compatible with the surrounding area. So for all those reasons and a lot more, I'm happy to support denial today.
Mr. Hagan, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, clearly, staff has a difference of opinion from Commissioner Smith, has all recommendations of approval. I'm not going to mince words. I mean, let's just stop piecemealing the denials in South County and someone make a motion just to have a moratorium on growth in South County, because that's essentially what we're saying here. And I'd also like to point out, while not germane to this issue necessarily, with all the application denials, we're going to see many more items like L1 on our agenda. So I'm going to make a substitute motion to approve the ZHM recommendation.
There's a substitute motion by Commissioner Hagan, second by Commissioner Merman for approval. I see no one else in the queue. Commissioner Overman, you recognize.
I understand your comments, but that was kind of why we were going to have a workshop a few weeks ago to discuss a true growth plan to make sure that the county can afford to provide whatever services it will be required to provide when we have projects like this that are creating sprawl in an area that doesn't have the infrastructure to support it. Does this project require connecting to county services? Can anybody answer that question?
You asked that of staff?
Yes.
Staff?
I'm sorry?
You want to repeat your question?
I said, well, I could start all over again, but bottom line, we don't have a growth plan for this particular area that I'm aware of. Do we have services that this project can connect to, or is the developer going to be required to connect to our system? I mean, or the lots aren't big enough for septic, are they?
Correct. If this rezoning were approved, it would be required to hook up to public utilities, water and wastewater, and they would be required to hook up to our system and extend lines to serve the project. It would not be permitted to develop on well and septic tank.
Are there connectivity points currently available for them to connect to at this location?
There is capacity for the project to connect. They would need to extend the transmission lines to this site. They're not lines immediately adjacent to the site.
Okay. And based on that, given that we don't have a comprehensive growth plan for this particular area, and it does seem as though we don't have a good space for being able to actually address the sprawl that we're creating in this particular area. I mean, I understand the concept of the village plan and the employment plan. But the pinch point of creating a school at the only access to this particular piece of property is troubling. We're going to create how many thousand units? That has to drive by a school to get to the only highway in an area that is already challenged with transportation challenges. That's, while we do need to address our growth plans and our process, this seems to be contraindicated to any safety goal the county is required to have when approving projects for a community. Our job is to make sure that whatever planning we have in place or whatever process that we have in place, that we're able to not only provide adequate services where required, but also to ensure the safety of the citizens, to make sure that there's fire service available, to make sure there's schools available, to make sure there are roads available, and other services necessary. There's obviously more process in this approval to get to that point, but I don't think we're ready for this kind of development, and I won't support the motion.
Commissioner Kemp, you recognize.
Thank you. I very much appreciate
your comments, both to Commissioner Overman and Commissioner Smith, in terms of this project. And I don't think I have to go through the points again. You did it very, very well. I do think this is premature. Timing is critical in our comprehensive plan. It speaks to it over and over again. It's our job. Whether the timing of a development is appropriate is always our job and an important consideration. That's what we need to be doing. And as Commissioner Smith cited the parts of our comprehensive plan that charge us with that, Commissioner Overman, the kinds of issues and safety considerations and everything else that we have to have for our citizens. This is not the time to do that. That being said, because we have a motion to approve on the table, I want to make an amendment to that. And I want to make sure that the staff recommendations are restored as part of that. And that would be the condition 13 we've been speaking about, to ensure that the transfer of development rights would be enforceable by the county. Staff required a deed restriction in the form of a conservation easement. I spoke about that before. We need to be doing that. Otherwise, those transfer of development rights are totally meaningless if we don't have a conservation easement. So, and as I understand, the developer has agreed to this as well. So we need to restore and make sure that the staff recommendations, or my amendment is to include condition 13 as well as condition 26, which a majority of this board has already supported, which covers the manner of counting job opportunities. This is the same issue we had at the August meeting. We provided direction and adopted the Planning Commission's interpretation. Again, otherwise, as Commissioner Smith said, who was even part of those meetings, why do we have all that direction in our comprehensive plan that is so explicit? And what else does it mean except that those have to exist so that we don't have a monoculture subdivision out there? And people who participated in that community plan gave away the right to have mixed use in their individual properties, and ensured that this would create the kind of mixed use as an overall community. So my amendment is to restore or make as part of this recommendation condition 13 and condition 36. I'm sorry, 26, yes.
We have an
Thank you.
amendment to the substitute motion by Commissioner, except there's a second by Commissioner White. Commissioner White, you recognize.
Thank you. Commissioner Kemp, I appreciate you putting that motion to amend on the table. I think that's reasonable and, adds some necessary reassurances to this. I also agree with Commissioner Hagan, as we're looking at these cases for rezonings, we have our judge and jury hat on. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding. And I'm of the firm belief that the right way to do this is to address these issues through the comprehensive plan. I'm working on some things with staff that I hope to bring to the board soon that, they're not going to be easy. It's going to be a heavy lift, but they're initiatives that deal with things at the comprehensive plan level, before we end up in this place that's a quasi-judicial proceeding. I have an item on the agenda coming up in just a little bit to ask that we open up the comp plan and take a look at that RP2 category. Again, I'm of the firm belief that that's the right way to tackle these issues. But here and now, with this being a quasi-judicial proceeding, I just don't see any substantial competent evidence, as the attorneys like to say, to deny this request. And when was the Waimama Village concept roughly placed into the comprehensive plan? Roughly.
2008, or roughly
That was-
2008.
Okay.
It was in development. Sorry.
And
It's
I
a couple
always
years
and I
before
always
that.
like to point out that predates me and many members of this board. I can't help it that the Waimama Village that the Waimama Village category exists within the comp plan, but it exists, it is what it is, and we're here now to determine whether or not this request is consistent with what's spelled out in that category in the comp plan. So I'm definitely going to support the amendments. I hope that everyone, or the amendment, excuse me, I hope that everyone on the board supports it. And, I'm ultimately going to support the motion to approve. But I hope that you'll give strong consideration to what I have on the agenda, a couple items down the line, though, to begin to take a look at some of these issues in South County.
Commissioner Merman, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate all the comments everybody has made. I mean, you can tell there's a lot of passion here. Thank you, Commissioner Kemp, for putting that. I was actually thinking of doing the same thing because I think it's important to have those elements in there. I thank you to all the residents that come out. We now have moved from T-shirts to signs, so it's great to see again your passion, your commitment to come down here and have your voice be heard. But as you know, and from the emails, we're hearing support and not support, and we're kind of caught in the middle here. It's like Commissioner White said, there is really no, we have to act like the judge and jury. There is no reason to deny this. Otherwise, it'll end up across the street, and you'll see an item coming up later that's very evident of how that comes about. But I think this, I appreciate and the people for the project saying that they're looking at maybe, not having the 4 units per acre and really making it look as rural as possible. And I think that that's commendable, and that's really the reason why I want to support this project and move forward. I think it will, and plus so many residents that came out today to support it. So I'll be supporting the amendment and the substitute motion. Thank you.
Okay. We're now on the amendment to the substitute motion amendment by Commissioner Kemp, second by Commissioner White. We're voting on the amendment. Please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
We're now on the amended substitute motion by Commissioner Hagan, second by Commissioner Merman for approval. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried 4-3. Commissioner Kemp, Overman, and Smith voted no.
Mr. Moretta.
Thank you, Commissioners. This brings us to item G2. Oral argument has been filed for this case.
I have a motion to open for oral argument. Motion by Mr. Hagan, second by Commissioner Merman. To open for oral argument. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Michelle. You need the second. Michelle. Michelle.
Motion carried 7-0.
Mr. Moretta.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is a request for rezoning to planned development. It's located 80 feet southwest of the intersection of Roding Road and Bikers Trail. Michelle Heinrich of our staff is also going to be loading up a document to indicate some of the zoning standards that we're going to talk about in terms of the how this zoning is proposed. It's being proposed to implement the RP2 standards. It's located within the Riverview Community Plan. The existing zoning is AR, AS1, ASC1. The AR permits 1 unit per 5 acres. AS1 and the ASC1 permit 1 unit per acre. Again, this is a planned development to rezone to the RP2 district. Commissioners, the site plan meets all the requirements of the RP2. However, the applicant has sought relief from a couple of the standards, and that's what I want Michelle to load up on the overhead. The applicant has sought relief from 2 of the standards. The first standard they sought relief from is for the placement of the school. They're seeking to place the school out by Roding. That particular placement is the justification for that is so the school placement and implementation and operation of the school site, if needed, will not be held back by the phasing or the timing of the development in terms of the infrastructure within the development. So staff is recommending approval of the placement of the school in the area where Michelle can point to. It's on the northern part of the site. And then the other item that we need to speak to is the buffer reduction. The applicant is seeking a buffer reduction to only provide a 50-foot wide buffer in the area that's highlighted by yellow. The RP2 district requires a substantial buffer that requires percentages and width, but in this particular area, the site is really surrounded by other RP2 development, and it's also surrounded by existing development, particularly on the west side. It has some small areas of agricultural zoning on the northeast side. Much of that area is R4 in the comp plan, so it's anticipated that in the future that will likely be some type of suburban development as well. So given those factors exist both either in the zoning or in the comp plan, staff is recommending approval of the relief that's sought by the applicant, both for the school placement and the buffering. Other than that, they meet all the requirements of the RP2 in terms of the connectivity, the open space, the clustering, and we are recommending approval.
Applicant? Morning. State your name. You have 10 minutes.
Good morning. Elise Batzel with Stearns Weaver Miller. I'm joined by our team this morning. Steve Henry with Links and Associates, Clark Lowe Miller, and Brian Skidmore with Ardura, and David Smith also with Stearns Weaver Miller. This morning, this is an RP2 project, but it is not your normal RP2 project. For a variety of reasons that we're going to go over today, we believe that this RP2 project is different than what you've seen before. Your professional planning staff has provided substantial competent evidence saying that it's consistent with the Land Development Code. Planning Commission has provided substantial competent evidence demonstrating the project is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the zoning hearing master has also recommended approval. If I may go to the Elmo, Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you. This property is located on the south side of Rodine and Greenland Drive. It's approximately 188.5 acres. The future land use is RP2 and Res 4. As you'll see, there's a line that bifurcates where the two future land use designations occur, and that coincides directly with the property that is both inside and outside of the urban service area. The current zoning is AR, ASC, and ASC1. The surrounding zoning, which we'll talk about a little bit more when we show you a different exhibit, is a variety of different zonings, but you'll see that it's either has existing development or approved development all the way around this particular property. The request today is to rezone from AR, ASC1, and AS1 to PD. There are two planned development options. The first is a 376 single-family dwelling unit development, which includes 4,455 square feet of commercial development. The second option is exactly the same entitlements, but it would include a dedication of a 30-acre school site. We do meet the village node standards. You can see the village node is located in the center of the project. It's going to contain retail, shopping, amenities, and commercial. The pod is 17,766 square feet in compliance with the comprehensive plan. We also meet the requirement of the RP2 standards to provide a variety of community gathering spaces. As you can see from this exhibit, we have scattered those throughout the community to be available to the future residents. There was a question regarding clustering in some prior RP2 hearings, and so we just wanted to clarify that policy 4.5 as it relates to RP2 actually designates which areas are calculated for the purposes of clustering, and we do meet those requirements of the comprehensive plan. We know that connectivity is always a large issue with this board. As you can see from this exhibit, I think it's 15 points of connectivity. Your comprehensive plan says that achieving road connectivity is an important component of planned villages, so we've really tried to reflect that in this development and this design, and thus the project does meet policy 33.11. This is probably the most important exhibit that you're going to see. May I borrow your pen? Thank you. This is basically what I like to call the hole in the donut exercise. This project really is infill, if you can have infill outside of the urban service area, which is what makes this project kind of unique. Development exists, either is built out today or is already approved all the way around this project. This PD to the north is actually approved, and it has a big preservation area to the north. So literally, if I'm to draw a line, we are basically this veritable hole in the donut. The school site location, which Mr. Moretta spoke briefly about, let me get the correct exhibit up for you. You can see it there. We worked with the school board to identify a 30-acre site that worked with them. It was a little difficult because based on the timing of this development and based on the needs of the school boards in the very immediate future for a school site in this area, we worked with them to determine that the location, which is away from the village node where normally it would be, is close to a public access. The concern from the school board was if you approve this closer to the node, the school is not potentially going to be available because the development is going to take a while to proceed. And I believe that they're interested in having the site sooner rather than later. The school site will also serve both the existing developments all around, which are in need of a school, and the development of the proposed developments that sort of fill in that donut around where our development is. The buffering provisions in the comprehensive plan assume that RP development is adjacent to rural areas. That's typically how you would find a development. As we demonstrated in our presentation, this project is not adjacent to rural developments, actually adjacent to existing or approved single-family developments. And since buffers are intended to mitigate incompatibilities between uses, we worked with staff and came up with a plan that staff found compatible based on the existing surrounding uses. So we offer this alternative buffering plan. In your materials, it's very small, but there's also the same alternative buffering plan with the school site located so that you can see both. One thing that we've heard a lot about when we're talking about RP2 developments is the availability of public services and utilities. This graphic shows that both water and sewer are available to the property. The blue lines are water lines, which go right up to the property line. They come in from the west. The green lines are sewer lines, which the developer will tap into very close to the property. It's important to note as well that in rural areas, the future land use element specifically addresses when urban services should be provided. It says there will be no new extension of public water and sewer into the rural area unless the development is classified as a planned village, as described in the plan. This does fit that, although the developer will extend those lines at their expense. I wasn't going to talk specifically about the timing of development being premature, but since it was discussed in the last item, I thought it was important to address. Policy 2.1 breaks down the timing of development within the urban service area as well as the timing of development outside of the urban service area. When you talk about lack of planned services, unaddressed deficiencies, that is based on property within the urban service area. It specifically goes on to say, in a rural area, there will be no new extension unless it's classified as a planned village, which it is here. In the time that I have left, I just want to briefly address RP2. I understand that there are issues with RP2 that you're looking at as a board, but as it's written today, Your comprehensive plan does provide for the development of planned villages in rural areas. According to the future land use element, these villages are essentially self-supporting communities that plan for a balanced mix of land uses. The intent of the villages is to maximize internal trip capture and to avoid the creation of single-dimensional communities that create sprawl. So the idea in the comprehensive plan, which has been vetted and taken through the state process, it was found consistent with the state plan, is that these RP2 districts, as currently written, actually are not urban sprawl. And I know that you're talking about that later. For all of the reasons that we've outlined this morning, as well as the additional evidence that has been submitted into the record, in the prior hearing, we had testimony from our engineers, our experts, our land planners. This project is different and it is unique. It straddles the urban service area. It is already surrounded by existing and approved developments, creating that hole in the donut. Our client prefers I call it infill development, but I thought hole in the donut was a little catchier. We have a school site that will serve not only this development, but the existing and approved developments all the way around this area. Water and sewer are available to serve this project. For all of these reasons, we believe that this project is not premature. In conclusion...
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Got that in just in the nick of time.
We now move into oral argument, which is limited to parties of record from the file. In support, we have Randall Myers. Randall Myers. Okay. In opposition, Karen Mikulski.
Do we need to be sworn in on this one?
You have Ms. sworn in?
No.
Please swear in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, hold up, Miss. Start her at 10 minutes. Okay, now you have 10 minutes.
Karen Mahalski, 7903 West Whitewater Court. I listened to the brief end of the last one regarding this, and I heard Commissioner Hagan, who he left, so I'll see if hopefully he comes back so I can address some of his comments, and then Commissioner White. Yes, the comprehensive plan needs adjustments, but right now it should be your rule. Right now, things can be denied. Unfortunately, the planned services and your staff hasn't followed those. You always can find little snippets that state, oh, let's do this, and a little snippet here that let's approve this. But in the whole, we have to be thinking of what is best for our county. And your responsibility is fiscally responsible. Fiscally making sure the safety, as Commissioner Overman said, fire.
Excuse me, Ms. Mikulski, you need to confine your testimony to the record of the zoning hearing master. I'm reading from your testimony at the
I'll
ZHM.
go back to that. So I referenced time of growth. I disagree with the applicant. Time of growth, policy 2.2. There is adequate capacity for infrastructure, including transportation, schools, park, fire, EMS, sheriff's office. I also believe I referenced a Tampa Bay Times article and quoted parts of it. This was in regards to the Urban Land Institute. Tampa Bay article was from December 15th, 2017, and it was the Urban Land Institute that you received presentation on. Commissioner Pat Kemp, and I'm quoting.
Mikulski, is this in the record?
Yes.
Was this something that you submitted?
I read it. You can go to the minutes, and it's exact reading. Commissioner Pat Kemp, a Democrat, called it a watershed for us all. Republican. It's an exact quote that I read.
Okay, thank you for confirming that.
Okay. Republican Commissioner Victor Chris said he was skeptical of the exercise at first, but thought the results were well balanced and realistic. Regarding to the Urban Land Institute presentation that you received about protecting against urban sprawl. The next step is action. In the past, county, I think I skipped to Commissioner Sandy Merman said it was on the board to make it happen. This is a long-term thing we have to commit ourselves to, she said. We've allowed sprawl without having those centers of influence. And I think that's important, is that, you know, you were aware of this, you've had presentations on this, and now it's up to you to determine or to send back to your staff. And that's what I'm making a little explanation of what this meaning is. The other thing I referenced is this area here is susceptible to groundwater contamination. So as we build more, I'm explaining this, as we build more, then you're going to have more roads, and it's going to be susceptible to our aquifer of groundwater contamination. And this is your own map, which I don't think I should have to supply. In your own map, this is the area. How much time do I have?
7 minutes and 10
Okay,
seconds.
I'm going to go look back on my minutes so I can reference everything that I stated. The future of land use is for 2025, and since we are trying to approve this now in 2019, yes, you don't need to be saying no to development, just not at this time, per your comprehensive plan. And again, this is your abiding rule, my understanding of this as. And then I referenced that during the zoning hearing meeting, one of the staff stated that this is suburban. It should be suburban, but it's not. And the previous attorney stated this is a donut hole, and an RP2 is normally surrounded by rule. But because sprawl has occurred, because poor precedent has been set that hasn't followed the comprehensive plan, we're now in this situation. And I'm here to oppose, to bring to your attention of why there's opposition for these and why all these zoning hearing masters aren't going to consent is because they're not following the comprehensive plan. And maybe the staff isn't quite seeing it as well. I'm not sure. I would love to have meetings with them. But as she said, there's the donut and all the sprawl, yet this is rule. And I don't know if I referenced objective 4 in my statement, but objective 4 in the comprehensive plan is the rural area will provide areas for long-term agricultural use, large lot density, rural residential use, which can exist without the threat of urban or suburban encroachment. Unfortunately, previous poor decisions have been made, and not everybody can sue as number L in your agenda can, or the threat of the one precedent. So for those reasons, I highly support Commissioners White to, why don't you update your comprehensive plan so that the residents understand what is at stake and the residents understand the financial burdens they're willing to take on, as well as the lack of economic growth. Commissioner Merman, I'm going to go off script. Commissioner Merman is all about economic growth.
I'm sorry, Ms. Mikowski. I have to rein you back in.
Okay, so I'll stay back to that then. Let me look back at my minutes. Even though mistakes have been made prior, we should not continue to make the same mistakes, making poor decisions and not following our comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan is about preventing urban sprawl. And the reason to prevent urban sprawl is financial burdens on the county. In conclusion, we shouldn't be supporting this. It does not satisfy the time of development. We are supposed to be infilling as opposed to infilling rule. That's really it's really against the comprehensive plan. We should go back to our comprehensive plan and protect our resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Applicant rebuttal, 5 minutes.
I appreciate Ms. Mikowski's comments, but we don't believe her comments are supported by the record or by substantial competent evidence in the comprehensive plan or the land development code. We have submitted evidence into the record that shows the following. A portion of this project is in the urban service area. Utilities are readily available to the property for surrounding development. The developer will pay to bring them the short distance to get sewer to the property. The professional staff at the Planning Commission, who has been delegated under the comprehensive plan, the Planning Commission has interpreted the code in a way that, and provided a staff report that says that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan. There are experts. Not me, not the board, not Ms. Mikowski, but actually the Planning Commission and the Planning Commission staff. With respect to the timing of growth, Ms. Mikowski stated during the hearing before the zoning hearing master, and again tonight, we're supposed to be infilling. Just because, you know, we have this donut, that's not really infill. But first, it is. It is infill because infill is defined as filling in where properties all around a specific property have been similarly developed or similarly zoned. Second, the hole in the donut does actually require a different level of legal review for you as a board. There is Florida case law, which was submitted into the record in the zoning hearing master, that talks about decisions of the board, and if you were to decide something different based on a little island, that can't be supported. With respect to the susceptibility to groundwater contamination, I think that perhaps Ms. Mikowski was just reading the map wrong. If you don't mind, I'm just going to show the map she was referring to on the Elmo.
Is that, excuse me, is that map part of our record for this hearing?
It's not, but she did refer to it, and it's actually direct rebuttal evidence based on her testimony.
I have to find that that's not something in the record, because even though she referred to it, it wasn't placed into the record at the ZHM.
Your unincorporated Hillsborough County area susceptible to groundwater contamination actually ranks from no contamination all the way up to high levels of contamination in red. This is actually the lowest level. This property is in an area, South County, that has the lowest level of groundwater contamination in Hillsborough County by virtue of the maps. The entire county actually is listed on this map at some level, but this property is in the lowest level, for the record. We're available, again, our team, to answer any questions, and that concludes our rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Planning Commission staff?
Thank you. Melissa Leinhardt, Planning Commission staff. The subject property is located within two future land use categories, Residential Plan 2 and Residential 4. Approximately 165.3 acres of the site is in the rural area, and 23.2 acres is located in the urban service area. The site is also located within the limits of the Riverview Community Plan and the South Shore Area-Wide Systems Plan. The proposed plan development is consistent with and an allowable use within the RP2 and the Residential 4 future land use categories. The proposed plan development will utilize the planned village concept to develop a rural village consisting of a maximum of 376 single-family homes, a school site, and a village node. The request is for a maximum of 17,766 square feet of retail located within the village node, which is consistent with the RP2 future land use category. This category requires non-residential development to be located within the village node and internal to the planned village, meeting the intent of policy 33.10. The requested lot design is also consistent with the RP2 future land use category, which requires clustering in order to prevent sprawl, provide for the efficient provision of infrastructure, preservation of open space, and the protection of the environment. The applicant has requested a waiver to the 250-foot buffer requirement in certain locations. Staff concurs with the buffer waiver and proposed conditions provided by Development Services regarding this waiver. The proposed plan development has been reviewed by the school board, meeting the intent of Public School Facilities Element Policy 1.3.3. Achieving road connectivity is an important component of planned villages, and as such, the site plan demonstrates roadway connectivity in multiple locations, meeting the intent of Policy 33.11 of the future land use element. The site is located within the limits of the Riverview Community Plan. The proposed use supports residential development that complements the surrounding character, which is consistent with that community plan. Approximately 23.2 acres, as I mentioned, is within the urban service area. Within the residential 4 portion of the site, per policy 1.2 of the future land use element, all parcels within the urban service area are required to meet minimum density requirements. However, in this case, the site has some environmental constraints and would meet the exception to this policy as outlined in policy 1.3 of the future land use element. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed Plan development consistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County, subject to the conditions proposed by Development Services.
Thank you. Zoning hearing master.
The zoning hearing master considered this request to rezone approximately 188.51 acres from AR, AS1, ASC1 to plan development to permit up to 376 single-family homes with a internal commercial node and a possible school site. The rezoning request includes 2 waivers to the Land Development Code. The first waiver pertains to the requirement that the school site must be located within or adjacent to the village node. The proposed school site is located in the northwestern portion of the property. The location was chosen by the applicant to provide the required direct access to public roadway, Rodine Road. The school district supports the proposed school site location. The requested waiver is justified by the proposal to locate the school with direct access to a public roadway. The second requested waiver addresses the requirement that at least 70% of the project perimeter have a 250-foot wide buffer of open space. Instead of 70%, the applicant proposes that 37.2% of the perimeter have a buffer if the project does not include the school site, and 29.6% be buffered if the project does include the school site. The buffer is proposed to be 50 feet in width rather than the 250 feet that would be required by the Land Development Code. The reasons cited by the applicant for the reduction in buffer are based on adjacent existing land uses. Development Services staff has reviewed the request and found that it was justified as to the buffer-related waivers. As you heard, the Planning Commission found the request to be consistent with the Residential Plan 2 and Residential 4 future land use categories and supports the rezoning as consistent with an existing development in the area. The zoning hearing master considered the testimony both in support and opposition that was received at the zoning hearing master hearing. The zoning hearing master ultimately found that the request is compatible with the development pattern in the area and consistent with the intent of the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan, and recommended approval.
Commissioner, thank you. Commissioner Smith, you recognized.
Thank you. I don't like the RP2 proposals that we've seen recently, but if you're going to do RP2, I think this is the place to do it. I think this is the best RP2 I've seen. I appreciate Mrs. Mihalski's comments very much, and I agree with her comments about timing and sprawl and precedent, but I don't think they apply to this particular case. I think that this is eminently compatible. It's not having the problems of incompatibility that we have with some of the big ones in the surrounded by rural area that we've seen way outside the urban service area. There are a couple of little things that I wonder if we could fix them, make this even better, a better proposal. I don't think they need to go to a remand, but possibly just maybe a continuance or something. For one thing, the 2 roads, Greenland Drive and Hayes Clan Road, both of them are going to be on the school area. The staff report, page 8, says that Greenland Drive and Hayes Clan Road both have sufficient right-of-way to accommodate an urban typical roadway section, which includes the provision of sidewalks should the county opt to do this in the future. Well, as I just said before, in our future land use element in the comprehensive plan about planned villages, Objectives 33 says that Hillsborough County will not be planning or programming infrastructure. We're not going to be paying for infrastructure. The sidewalks on these 2 roads that front the school should be provided by the developer, in my view. I think that's a pretty small ask, but before you get before you get ready, there's, let's see, Rodine Road. Let me ask staff. Rodine is also like the main road there, and it's on our corridor preservation plan, which maybe someday in the future will be a 4-lane road with bike lanes, yay. But what's the plan for sidewalks? I mean, are they going to be providing sidewalks there?
Yes, Commissioner, and I just need to clarify that comment in the staff report. I think it was not clear enough as to what it was trying to convey. Those roads right now are built with rural cross-sections, which require more land for the swales. The comment about the urban cross-section really wasn't helpful in this instance because it wasn't really germane to the issue. We did hear your concern about the sidewalks on those roads. We have talked to the applicant, and we have looked at the right-of-way and the design and believe that a sidewalk can fit in there even with the existing rural cross-section on the road. I've spoken with the applicant's representative, and I believe they're prepared to commit to providing sidewalks on those 2 road segments here today.
That would be great. And my, just 2 more questions. The cross-action access, well, wait, what about the sidewalk on Rodine?
I believe that they're required to have a sidewalk on the frontage of Rodine Road.
Okay.
Per our code
So that's on the
requirements.
south side, which at least is on the school side, okay. And the cross-access to the south is, it says it's envisioned, but that means that if and when something happens there that allows that, they will connect? That's going to be like a stub out that they'll?
It will be a stubbed out cross-access if at such time as that area to the south is.
Okay,
Yep.
got
So-
it. I heard that. And
Okay.
then, yeah, so there will be, when it's feasible. And the last thing, and I don't know if this can be fixed or not. Maybe I could ask the applicant a question?
Yes?
The only other concern I have, and I really appreciate you working right here on the fly to make those
Absolutely.
sidewalks happen. The village node, the point of having a village node in a RP2 outside the urban service area is to capture some trips so that, we're not adding to the traffic out there. Okay. But when you have a great big RP2, then you have this certain requirement for a percentage that allows for a pretty large node to accommodate commercial. This is the teенsiest, weensiest little RP2 that could possibly be in the minimum 165 acres of a RP2 to qualify. So the requirements for the node is small, and it's only 0.4 acre. And I'm wondering, what can you really get in there that's going to capture trips?
Well, part of it would be neighborhood service commercial, right? You have your dry cleaner or probably that's bad for the environment, but something that services the neighborhood, maybe a restaurant. I don't know that we have an end user yet for that, but obviously when commercial services like retail and neighborhood serving commercial come to an area, they try to cater towards what those people in the area need or want or what's missing from outside. So I assume that would be what would dictate. One of the other things, if you look at the site plan, you'll see there's a notch out. There's a lot of wetland on this area. So part of our challenge in fitting all of this in was the preservation of those wetlands. We also created an additional buffer outside of all the open spaces to try to amenitize those open spaces. So basically, they're not just sitting there. They can be walkways for folks and paths. The idea would be to create interaction, not just from the vehicular perspective, but also from a pedestrian perspective. So people will actually walk to that village node. There's going to be more opportunities than in a typical RP2 development.
Yeah, my question is really, I get that it's a market driven thing, okay? But my question is 0.4 acres really enough to meaningfully capture trips.
I mean, your comprehensive plan as it's
Yeah.
written today says it is.
Yeah.
We do meet that requirement. Do you want to address this? Let a planner.
Okay.
David Smith, 401 East Jackson Street, Suite 2100, Director of Development and Zoning for Stearns Weaver Miller. Regarding the RP2 node, the 0.4 acres is actually per the code as to what is required to be provided. It's actually a 2-acre site. So we're meeting the code with respect to the amount of commercial that is required to be provided in the area for it to meet the code requirements, but there's more acreage there available for the node, which is supposed to have your community amenities, basically become the center of the project. Also, the requirement is it has to be within, 90% of the development has to be within the radius. So this location is the location for the node. So we think it's adequately sized for the size of the project. Again, it's 376 units, which is, given the amount of retail that's going to be required, this will meet that need for the project. So,
Thank you. And so, and that might be something we can address in Commissioner White's look at RP2, is making sure that how to capture trips. So anyway, I'd be supportive. I'm going to listen to the other commissioners before making a motion or voting, but so far, I'm supportive of what I've heard so far.
Commissioner Overman, you're recognized.
While I do like the project a great deal, I wish it were a little further inland, but I do have some concerns about it. The road issue and the safety issue is clearly an issue. This particular land provides, on average, based on the existing zoning, about 350 trips that is now going to go to some 6,440 trips. That puts a significant amount of traffic on Rodine. It also does address the fact that we are adding some commercial area and a planned area, which is good. But that is only really taking away 192 trips. So, that does concern me, where it is the goal of having the planned community and having commercial and mixed use to actually take some traffic off of the roads. The ratio doesn't feel right, especially given the nature of where Rodine is in this area. It has and will be continually needing to address the congestion that we've already built in the area, and this will add additional to the area. I like the idea there's a school there. That's terrific. I love the idea of the sidewalks. That's terrific. But I am concerned that there is some inconsistencies in what we've decided to waive in this area. The Land Development Code requires at least 70% of the project's perimeter be provided with a 250-foot wide buffer of open space. The applicant are requesting a waiver of this requirement that will reduce the required 70 to and reduce the 250-foot width. Under the option, that does not include development of the public school. The project that does not include the development of public school. The project proposes a reduction from 70% to 37.2% of the RP2 boundaries. The perimeter buffer in this option contains less than 16,000 linear square feet. Under the option, that does include development of the public school, and the project proposed a reduction from 70% to 29.6% of the boundaries. From reading the staff report, it appears that in addition to not meeting the 70% requirement, the development also has many portions that do not meet the 250 feet buffer of open space. There are areas that have buffering of 200 feet, 100 feet, 50 feet, and in some areas with no perimeter buffer at all. So as such, I'm not sure that this development design is ready and doesn't provide the buffering required and is incompatible with adjacent properties. So at this point, I would recommend denial.
Commissioner Hagan, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, all recommendations of approval. We only had one person that spoke in opposition. She doesn't even live in South County. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve with the additional condition that regarding the sidewalks that Commissioner Smith identified.
And those would be along Hayes Clan Road and Greenland Drive, 5-foot sidewalks.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Hagan, second by Commissioner Merman for approval. Commissioner Merman, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll make this brief. I appreciate the applicant working with, us with our concerns about the sidewalks. It's really important, especially as the rural areas should probably, that's always one characteristic, is that there's no sidewalks. And I definitely think that needs to change now over time. People are just walking and biking more, and I think it's really important. But I don't see any legal reason, again, to deny this, as it was supported. And I know staff, not just our staff, but the Planning Commission, the Land Use Hearing Officer, they really thoroughly vet these projects inside and out, backward and forward. And this particular project is a great model for RP2. This is what we want. We want projects that have infill. And I think that's an important note going forward. So I'm definitely supporting approval of the project.
Commissioner Kemp, you recognize.
Thank you. Well, I certainly disagree that the land use hearing officer thoroughly vets things, but it's our job to do that. So, I also was looking at this in the context of where it was. We had a lot of discussion here about timing. It actually, I think, was way more appropriate for the first item that came before us, and some of the comments that were made just in terms of that, because they were made during this discussion, was that one of the reasons that when it was cited about the timing was that within these planned villages, as was stated, that from Hillsborough County will not be planning or programming infrastructure to serve these areas within the planning horizon of this plan, which was 2025. That's what some of that language and discussion was about, because it wasn't really anticipated to be at this place that we are today. That having been said, it is in the middle of what is, I think, compatible types of development. I appreciated even more hearing some of the descriptions and, again, the willingness to consider things like the sidewalks. And I appreciate the discussion about trip capture and kind of neighborhood commercial opportunities. I'm glad there's 2 acres there. I hope that they're maybe used rather than 0.4, whatever it was, because I think that would make it a better place. I just, and I appreciate the concerns that Commissioner Overman raised about Rodine Road and the buffering. I think those are thoughtful considerations. Again, because the county has already said within our plan that we're not putting in the capital costs associated with the provision of infrastructure needed to serve these planned villages must be provided by the developer of such a program and will not be funded by Hillsborough County. I know that Rodine Road is, I probably get as many complaints about anything as I get about Rodine Road, all kinds of email and issues about the congestion and the issues on Rodine Road. That being said, again, this looks to me compatible within the surrounding development. It, I think, is well done. I appreciate the explanations, which even kind of elucidated some of the thoughts that were made in terms of creating this development. some of the design that was implemented in it. So I just, I will be supporting it. I don't know if other concessions are available or what they might be, but I'd like to, again, just hear from the other commissioners regarding these issues.
Commissioner Smith, you recognize.
Just a quick point. I really appreciate Commissioner Overman's discussion of the issue of buffering and giving the waiver. Those things should be looked at very, very carefully. But in this case, what gives me comfort and might be helpful to you is that it's consistent with the development coming around it. So, I think that's what staff was considering. The Tropical Acres to the west has the same kind of buffer that this development will give them, along that same shared border. And then the southeastern area abuts an approved planned village that provides no perimeter buffer, and so this is going to be in the same manner to that. So given the development that's around, I think with the planned villages, when they're out in the middle of the rural area, it's really important to be watching those buffer concerns and minding the code and the comp plan to provide exactly that buffer between other rural properties. But in this case, to buffering against Tropical Acres, to make it match the Tropical Acres, I think is the variance is warranted.
Commissioner Overman, you recognize.
Thank you for that clarification. And like I said, I like the project. My biggest concerns really has to do with, where we're going in terms of how we're growing and the standards we've set for Vision Zero. This not required to do the sidewalks is a concern, and I hear that that's something that will be considered in the future. But given that this particular area, especially off of Rodine, the accident history on this shows a doubling of what we've seen in terms of injuries and accidents in the area. And that doubling was in the area of vulnerable users, aggressive driving, but more importantly, lane departure. And without having the proper buffering or the area sidewalk protective areas, we're creating the nightmare of which we're trying to fix. So, and because the amount of traffic we're going to be putting onto Rodine is not a small amount. It's 60 times what is currently there. So while I like the project, I do have concerns about the buffering and the density that is being brought as a consequence of the buffering allowances or waivers. But I do like hearing that there's going to be considerable effort to address not only sidewalk but safety, that the developer is going to assume the cost of doing it, given that we're not going to. Thank you.
We have a motion by Commissioner Hagan, second by Commissioner Merman for approval. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Mr. Beretta, before I call on you, members, we still have a lot to go on our agenda, so please be ever mindful of time and your statements. If you can curtail some of it, we'd be highly appreciative. Mr. Moretta, you recognize.
Thank you, Commissioners. This brings us to item G3 on the agenda. This is a rezoning proposal for a plan development from AS1. It's 19-0655, located in the greater Palm River area. Before I get into all the details, the applicant has advised us that they're going to be seeking a remand of this. They're going to request that of the board. And I would just ask, with your pleasure, I believe oral argument has to also be opened up. But before we get into the details, you might want to hear from the applicant.
You're requesting a remand?
Yes, sir. Cami Corbett with Hill Ward Henderson again. Yes, we have been speaking with staff since our hearing, and we believe that we would benefit from a remand at this time.
Move to remand. The date will be October 14th at 6 p.m.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner White and Commissioner Kemp and Commissioner Merman, and second by Commissioner White and Commissioner Kemp and Commissioner Overman. Before we do that, is Alan Deo here?
Yes, he is part of
He was here,
He's
he had signed
part
up
of the
as
team.
part of support, so I just want to let you know that we're going to remand this, okay? So, is that okay with you? You got something you want to say?
No.
No, he doesn't. She spoke for you, didn't she? Okay. Have a motion and a second. Please record your vote.
It was Merman and White had the motion in the second, correct?
Yeah, it was a Merman, White, and Kemp, motion and second.
Motion carried 7-0.
Mr. Moretta.
That brings us to items H1A, H1B. These are both public hearings, and they're related items. H1A deals with the change to through a minor modification to a plan development to allow a small percentage of commercial on a half-acre site, and then the commensurate DRI piece that also implements that change. Mr. Israel Monsanto is going to provide you a brief orientation of both the sites, and they could probably be voted on as in a single motion.
Israel Monsanto Development Services, the request to amend the DRI 73 Summerfield Crossings under petition 190109 is to add 6,000 square feet of community commercial retail entitlements to be allocated on our parcel within Tract 4. This Tract 4 is approved today for community commercial and office tech. Map H is also being amended to reflect the additional community commercial entitlements in the land use tables. The subject parcel is approved today with 6,000 square feet of office uses. The related PRS 18-1236 item H1A will allow the option to develop the site with a maximum of 6,000 square feet of community commercial uses or office uses in the reference out parcel. Staff has reviewed both requests and has no objections.
Okay. Can we take both of these up at the same time? Okay. We're going to take H1A and H1B. Is there anyone here wishing, this is a public hearing, anyone here wishing to speak as a proponent? Anyone wish to speak as a proponent? Anyone wish to speak as an opponent? Hold on. Did you want to speak? Oh, you're the applicant? Okay, oh, wait a minute. We're fine. Oh, I didn't call the applicant up there.
Well, he'd be a proponent.
Yeah, he'll be all right. We have a motion by Commissioner Merman, second by Commissioner Hagan to approve H1A and H1B. Sorry about that, sir, but I think you know how to vote. So, see no further discussion. Please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
See, it all worked out in your favor. Okay.
You want to put the commissioner item?
Mr. Moretta?
Commissioners, would you like to move to the commissioner items and then hold the LDC amendments for last? That would take us to commissioner items, which include probably the more, in the county attorney item, which is probably a more lengthy discussion than the workshop.
Any objection to reverting to the L item? Any objection? No objection. Okay.
We're going to J, my item first, right?
Which one? What? Where we going first? To J?
Pardon?
To
The first item would be J1.
Okay. Any objection? Seeing no objection? Okay. You recognize?
Okay, thank you. Listen, this has been a long meeting, so I'll just keep this simple. I've spoken with multiple planners that have said that the RP2 category as currently drafted isn't working. It's clear that residents by and large agree that RP2 is not what they thought or hoped it would be. And finally, tensions between the development community and community groups are at a flashpoint. I think it's time to open up the comp plan for a look at the RP2 category, and if the motion that I'm about to make passes, I would like staff to be directed to bring back an agenda item detailing the process and timeline. So with that being said, oh, and I guess I should say before I make the motion that you've all seen multiple emails from community members, particularly from the Baum area. They're well organized out there with their community association. They've had a meeting recently, just the other night. I understand that they had more than 60 in attendance. Remember that even with all the RP2 development going on, Baum is still a rural community. So to have over 60 in attendance is huge. So with that being said, I move to direct the Planning Commission and Development Services staff to begin the study and preparation of certain amendments to the Residential Plan 2, i.e. RP2, land use category of the comprehensive plan, and to the implementing regulations in Part 5.04.00 of the Land Development Code, including consideration of amendments to the requirements regarding the mixture of community and neighborhood commercial uses.
I have a motion by Commissioner White, second by Commissioner Overman. Commissioner Overman, you're recognized.
I truly appreciate bringing this forward. It's just been on my agenda to do for quite some time, so I'm really glad that we're addressing this issue. You know, government doesn't have an obligation to provide retirement plans or profits to large landowners, but we do recognize that they take a risk and are looking for an opportunity to be able to plan for their lives. I do like the transfer, the TDRs, the transfer development rights, as long as it's done with the intent of bringing density to urban areas rather than to suburban areas. So we have work to do. The urban service area was designated or designed to limit the amount of county infrastructure outside of an area such as RP2. And as such, we must strive for smart growth that takes into account not only property rights, but it takes into account transit, economic development, and all the land use codes that we have. I welcome community feedback and possible amendments, but I think we do need to have a strong growth strategy in terms of how to address the fact that, yes, people are moving here, but we need to do a better job of how they choose to be here and where they choose to live, and the infrastructure requirements for safety and economic opportunity that we are charged with as commissioners. So I look forward to this conversation and look forward to working with staff and coming up with changes and recommendations for our comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith, you recognized.
Thank you. So I agree that the RP2 category is not working and causing a lot of trouble, but I just wonder if you can give a little bit more direction about what, you know, the preparation of certain amendments, what that kind, you know, what you're thinking and where that's headed.
I think that's legal speak. Ms. Lundgren helped me to draft the agenda item. I would assume that when we say certain amendments, that just means any and all proposed amendments that may bubble up as part of this process of engaging the community and developers and landowners. Is that correct?
Yes, I think the Planning Commission can kind of lead the direction and lead the stakeholder outreach and coordination with development services as well, and get to some recommendations in that process.
So correct me if I'm wrong, because this is my item. You helped me draft it. I just read certain to just mean any and all, just anything that may bubble up as part of this process.
Yes, anything, of course, anything has to be looked at legally as well, but we have the opportunity to kind of start out a broad process and narrow it down.
Yeah, so it's just lawyer stuff, okay? I had a little help putting this together, so, all right.
Commissioner Kemp, you recognized.
Thank you. I also just had some concerns exactly the same about kind of where this was going. I don't think anybody doesn't think, or almost no one doesn't think this has to be addressed on some more comprehensive level. But I worry sometimes because we know the frustration that community members have had, and I've had them say to me, "Oh, please don't make me go through this again." So I just want to, you know, we'll get there, I hope.
Okay. A motion by Commissioner White, second by Commissioner Overman. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
All we now. Those people out there like you, man. Are we now going to go to item L, or, okay.
Are you ready?
K was withdrawn. pull. We're now on item L, County Attorney's item.
Commissioners, we have before you today kind of unusual item. This is pertaining to a rezoning that was denied by the board back on August 8th, 2017, rezoning RZ 16-1116. That denial was challenged in court pursuant to petition for certiorari, pursuant to William F. Sutton Family LLP et al. Versus Hillsborough County. The circuit court granted the petition for certiorari, and that quashed the board's denial of that rezoning. And on May 24th, 2019, the Second District Court of Appeal denied without opinion the county's petition for certiorari relief from that circuit court order, basically ending the appeal process. We'll ask that the board approve the rezoning at this time based on the legal posture of the case. At this time, I will ask Mr. Brazel from the County Attorney's Office to explain where we stand in the litigation.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rob Brazel, Chief Assistant County Attorney for Litigation. Commissioners, this case is now in a posture where, in essence, it's somewhat been taken away from you and somewhat been decided by the courts. Judge Foster entered an order of 6 or 8 pages or so in some detail explaining why he felt that this rezoning should have been approved. It was appealed up to the Second District Court of Appeal, where the Second District Court of Appeal affirmed Judge Foster's ruling. So it's now in a posture where the courts are essentially sending you the message that this one needs to be approved. If it's not approved at this point, I have a lot of concern about a possible subsequent lawsuit being filed by the Suttons and their counsel over in federal court, which would do really nothing to change the ultimate outcome, which is that this project is probably going to be built one day or another. And the question is whether or not it's going to be built with extra attorney's fees and damages added onto it, or built without that. And that's kind of the piece that this board now controls. So where it is in front of you today is really about following an order of the court, really about following the rule of law, and I think at the same time avoiding any additional expense or damages that may flow from this if it's denied.
Thank you for that clear understanding. We have a motion by Commissioner Merman. Second by Commissioner White for approval. Commissioner Overman, you recognized.
Thank you for bringing this up, and thank you for move to approve this decision. I think this is all the more reason why the last item we addressed is so critically important. I absolutely hate sitting at getting prepared for these land use meetings and feeling as though if I make a decision that's right for where we need to be, that we're going to get sued if I do, deny it or otherwise. The community doesn't come out and sue people very well, but property rights do rule the day. So I appreciate that we'll be moving this forward, but I think it makes it even more important that we move swiftly on the item we just decided to move forward on, adjusting our comprehensive plan.
Commissioner Kemp, you recognized.
Thank you. I will be supporting this too. I just like to, for the record, and so there isn't fear with regards to, what I hear so often is they're taking us over to the courthouse steps. I like to proudly, I think, on the cases that have gone before us, I think I heard, we asked about this, that you've won 21 of the cases and lost 5. Is that correct?
Lewis Whitehead has won 21.
Yeah, thank you. Or the county attorney's
yes.
office, I should say. Excuse me.
Yes, Commissioner.
So we haven't been reckless about moving forward. We've been measured. This I thought was actually, when it was moved forward by Commissioner Hagan, I thought was one of our weaker cases. So and I hope that there's support now for changing 1.9, which it was based on. And I think we still need to address. At any rate, I'll be supporting approving this.
Okay, well, excuse me, I'm sorry, y'all. We have a motion by Commissioner Merman, second by Commissioner White to approve Item L1. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried, 6-1. Commissioner Hagan voted no.
Thank you. Mr. Moretta?
Commissioners, that brings us up to the workshop for the Land Development Code amendments. The purpose of this workshop is to take input from the board. We have 5 amendments. We are going to follow this workshop up with 2 public hearings. The first public hearing will be September 26th at 6 o'clock, and October 24th will be the second one at 6 o'clock. We're prepared to go as quickly or as in detail as the board wants to go. I can give you a quick overview, or we can go into detail for each one of the amendments. I can tell you the first one deals with clarifying our phosphate amendments with respect to, I believe it's the payment of the security bonds. Then moving to the zoning side, we're clarifying and changing our alcohol regulations to recognize brew pubs and microbreweries, which our code is really outdated with. On the third one, which is I3, we're recognizing that self-service automated car wash facilities can also have, right now there's 3 different types of car washes. We're creating 2 because one of them is sort of redundant with the other, and clarifying that a self-service car wash can also have slight office staff that can go out there and take money and so forth. I believe that's the case. I think I'm going too fast in these, actually. I'd rather defer to Israel, but we also have 2 more dealing with accessory dwellings and then mobile home parks in terms of where the bump up can occur. Israel, why don't we go ahead and walk through this? 'Cause I think I'm trying to go too fast and I'm confusing everybody here. But,
Before you start, be as brief as possible. If we have to get any other, the longevity of some things, we'll move into it, but be as brief as possible if you possibly can.
Sure.
Thank you.
We'll start with Mike Stevenson from the Public Utilities.
This is LDC 191043.
Yes, sir. My name is Mike Stevenson with the Utilities Department. We're talking about revisions and clarifications to the LDC Part 8.02, phosphate mining regulations. There's 3 sections up for revision. Section 80208 is clarifying the reclamation release process. Section 80209 is revising the requirements for annual reports. And Section 80210 is revising the calculation of financial responsibility payable to the board. And I'm here for any questions.
Any questions? See no questions? LDC 191053.
Yeah, the purpose of this amendment is to recognize the emergence of local independent microbreweries. The amendment will incorporate a standard for microbreweries to allow retail sales and distributions of beer in commercial zoning districts where capping a maximum of 15,000 barrels per year. Microbreweries in the CN district will be limited to retail package only. We also have definition for microbreweries and brew pubs. LDC 191054, this will clarify the car wash uses in the commercial neighborhood zoning district. The amendment will allow automated car washes in these commercial neighborhood districts. Definition of car wash will be clarified to specify differences between self-serve automated and staffed car washes will be differentiated. LDC 191055, the purpose of this text amendment is to clarify the accessory dwelling provision of the Land Development Code. This text amendment will regulate accessory dwellings by minimum lot size and will allow accessory dwellings on legal non-conforming lots. Additionally, we will amend the table of allowable uses to permit accessory dwellings in the residential single-family conventional RSC 9 districts. Lastly, text amendment 191218, this is to modify the density provision for recreational vehicles. This text amendment will revise Note 1 of Section 611-110C1 to eliminate the density increases for proposed RV parks outside the urban service area or where urban services are unavailable. I'm available if you have any questions.
I see no questions. You just went through everything, right? Is that everything you just went through?
that concludes everything that we have proposed, and that concludes the agenda.
I said quick, but my gosh, man. Okay. Thank you. Seeing nothing else, we'll adjourn.
Thank you.
What plan amendments? Where's that? Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, just adjourn.
Okay.
Yeah, it don't mean a new one.
We're adjourning land use and moving into
This one and they're getting ready to open
July
another
plan
one.
amendment cycle.
Yeah, it's not there. I don't know.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tony Garcia, Planning Commission staff. Heeding your prior comments, we will do our best to be brief in our presentations for the commission this morning. I think we're now into this afternoon. So we have 5 amendments that are just coming to you for a briefing. This will be an overview. These will not be coming back to you for public hearing until October 24th. So there will be ample time to be briefing each one of you individually should you have any additional questions based on what you hear today. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and have Ms. Kelly kick this off.
Which one, here?
Thank you. We're just having a little bit of a technical issue. It's good afternoon, Krista Kelly, Planning Commission staff. I'm going to be presenting the next 3 plan amendments, and for context, I provided this overall map showing how all these maps are, all these amendments are in the same geographic area, although they do stand alone in terms of action. Okay, CPA 1903, it's on the west side of Kingsway Road. Here's a location map. Again, you can see the cluster of plan amendments here. Just to give you context, it's east of Mango Road, south of Tasassa Road, west of McIntosh Road, and then north of I-4, all 3 of them. This side, as are the others, are in the rural service area. The aerial for 1903 shows a site outlined in pink. As you can see, it's agricultural in use, as is the surrounding area. The amendment site consists of 5 parcels totaling approximately 109 acres. On the left-hand side, you see the adopted future land use map. The site's currently designated agricultural rural 1 to 5. You can see the surrounding area. To the east is agricultural 1 to 5. Adjacent to the west is residential 1, and agricultural estates 1 unit per 2.5 acres. The applicant's requesting a change to residential 1, and that's shown on the proposed map on the right-hand side. The impact of this change would basically be an increase in the number of allowable dwelling units from 21 dwelling units to 109 dwelling units. Based on its location, the site does not meet commercial locational criteria, and therefore that calculation isn't provided. The next amendment in that cluster is 1904. You can see it on the east side of Kingsway Road right here. Again, the general location map showing the general location south of Tasassa, east of Mango, west of McIntosh, and north of I-4. And again, it is in the rural service area. This is a privately initiated amendment that consists of 15 parcels totaling 315 acres approximately. Like the 1903, this site is in agricultural use, as is the surrounding area. There are some residential developments, particularly fringing around Tasassa Lake and to the east of the site. The adopted map shows the site agricultural rural 1 to 5, as are the surrounding areas. And again, the applicant is requesting a change to residential 1 on the right-hand side. The impact would be an increase of dwelling units from 63 dwelling units to 315 dwelling units. And based on the location, it doesn't meet commercial locational criteria. And finally, the last of the three, 1905. This site is just north, it's adjacent and north to 1903 on the west side of Kingsway Road and is in the rural service area. The aerial shows the site the same as the other two, as agricultural in use, as is the surrounding area. This is the smallest of the three at 24.9 acres. The site's currently designated agricultural rural 1 to 5, and the applicant is requesting residential 1. The impact, similar to the other two, would be an increase in the number of dwelling units from 4 units to 24 dwelling units. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I see no questions. Thank you very much. Commissioner Overman, you recognize.
So these comp plan amendments would permit the change in use and would exclude the necessary requirement, or would include the necessary requirement for sewer and water services?
It's based on size, and they would not require.
So by making these amendments and changing it from a rural, we would actually be continuing the process of adding septic systems within the county?
That is my understanding. We would have to get verification from the Public Works Department, but I believe anything greater than half an acre is served by water, septic and
Okay.
well.
Okay, and related to that, not related to this particular, any one of these particular projects, but, or plan amendments, but we've had a workshop regarding how much we would have to delegate, how the cost would be to mitigate septic systems. And we've figured out that we would have a significant financial burden just to replace 500 septic systems. And yet, making any and all of these amendments would allow for a significant number of septic systems. So I'm not sure where the insanity lies, but it sure lands squarely on any of these plan amendments at this point.
Commissioner, if I could just address your question about the septic. The septic issue here is because of it's in the rural service area. The lot size doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's the location of this area. It's an area that we don't serve with public utilities.
Exactly.
Commissioner White, you recognize.
Yeah, and to both Mr. Gormley and Commissioner Overman's point, I like what I see here in terms of community planning. Tenoda Sassa is, one of those areas of the county where you can go and live on an acre of land in a semi-rural environment. The existing lotting pattern has sort of dictated that. But to Commissioner Overman's point, if we approve this map amendment, we're potentially, going to go from 60 some odd septic tanks to 300 some odd septic tanks. So, this might be a great area of the comp plan to take a look at and see if maybe, it could still be designated with those, lower density, semi-rural, estate-sized lots, if you will, but that we, maybe offer, sewer hookup. That would, I guess, technically be an expansion of the urban service area, but, But, you can control the densities, though, at the same time that's done. So you do bring up a good point about, the environmental impacts of, these acre lots outside the urban service area, so.
Okay. Next.
Yeah, let me just, since we're having this
Hold on,
discussion about
Commissioner Smith, you recognize. Remember, we're not voting on these today.
septic tanks in, right, but it's a workshop, we're talking about them. Septic tanks in the rural area, and there's a considerable amount of wetlands draining into Lake the Notasassa in this area, and you're absolutely right, that if we extend urban services, we're extending the urban service area boundary. And once you do that, once you spend taxpayer dollars to do that, given that we have a dozen communities inside the urban service area, Gibsonton, North and South Brandon, a lot of communities that do not have urban services yet. And we're considering raising fees in order to provide, raising water and sewer fees in order to be able to retrofit some of those areas and retrofit low-pressure sewer systems in Ruskin and Waimama. If we were theoretically to expand urban services up way outside the urban service area boundary, it just wouldn't even be a good investment, in my view, to do it for really low density people, since we're not able to provide those services where we have higher density communities. So that, I appreciate all the discussion, but all of that would have to weigh in.
Commissioner Kemp, you recognize.
Thank you. I think insanity was the better description, honestly. It would be ridiculous for us to consider moving this, and I'll let you know, Commissioner Overman, 3 no votes does it, because there needs to be 5 votes for approval. It would be so unwise. This is exactly what we've been talking about, not breaking this line open, requiring wastewater and water, which we're under incredible pressure to raise, not only to accommodate the infrastructure that we haven't built in terms of septic and low pressure, but also to accommodate just all the new development, which those living here now are paying increased water and wastewater fees for, in which some of the people who have supported this won't support those fees. So, I just, if you're going to put down the development, just like we have in the urban service area now, we are not doing well by it. So it'd be, I think, I can't even imagine, I think it would be really reckless to break open that line and do anything. I'd just like to put that on the record right now.
Commissioner White, you recognize.
Does it take 5 votes for this to ultimately be approved?
For a map amendment to be approved, yes.
You may want to tell the applicant that this one's likely dead on arrival.
Okay, yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Will Augustine, Planning Commission staff. The next agenda briefing item before you is Hillsborough County's Comprehensive Plan Amendment 1906. This plan amendment is located in north central Hillsborough County along Highway 92, just west of Plant City. The subject site is a privately initiated map amendment in north central Hillsborough County, which is approximately 3.4 acres in size. The aerial shows that the surrounding area is predominantly single-family homes. Land use of residential 1 and residential 2 predominate the area. The subject property is south of Lynn Oak Circle and Highway 92 intersection. McIntosh Road is to the west. Branch Forbes Road is to the east. The subject site is in the rural service area. The subject site has adopted residential 1 land use classification. The area south of Highway 92 is residential 1. The area north of Highway 92 is residential 2. Residential 1 and residential 2 are the predominant land use of the surrounding properties. The applicant is requesting a suburban mixed-use 6 land use classification change in order to allow a currently operating commercial engine repair shop. The currently adopted land use classification of residential 1 allows a maximum of 3 dwelling units on the 3.4 acre site. Suburban scale neighborhood commercial, office, or multi-purpose projects are limited to 110,000 square feet or a floor area ratio of 0.25. With a land use change to suburban mixed-use 6, the subject site would have a potential build-out of up to 18 dwelling units. Suburban scale neighborhood commercial, office, or multi-purpose projects are limited to 175,000 square feet or a floor area ratio of 0.25. This site does not qualify for locational criteria. And that concludes my presentation.
Commissioner Overman, you recognize.
You know, I've been looking at how our land use in our urban service area kind of works, and this obviously is outside the urban service area, but it does, the area north of 92 is impacted by I-4. You know, it does lend itself for, in my opinion, something that's close to a highway does allow for possible consideration of other types of land use that maybe don't work with the urban service area kind of guidelines when we're outside of it. But the density that this amendment might provide is not on the south side of 92. And so that road corridor matters when we're looking at the way we're looking at how land works. So it's interesting in this particular case, but it is, again, it's outside the area. I might think differently if it were on the north side of 92, as that is that corridor in between 2 major roads, and 92 is a major road through that area as well as I-4. But I'm not sure this is in line with the area around it. So when we look at this amendment, I think that's something that needs to be taken into consideration.
Commissioner White, you recognize.
Thank you. And Commissioner Overman, I think what really needs to be taken into consideration, if I've understood the presentation correctly, is that someone is operating in an inconsistent manner with what their land use allows. They essentially have a code violation, right? And they're trying to remedy that with this request. That's what I thought I heard.
That is correct.
Yeah. So you said it's a large engine repair operation, if I heard you right?
Semi-diesel engine, yes,
So,
that's right.
I mean, what I would want to know is, is it a private owner? How many jobs are provided for there? What are the salaries? Because, there's an economic impact here, economic development impact of potentially pulling the rug out from underneath these folks. But as I've said time and time again from this dais, it really, really bothers me when people try to remedy code violations by coming in to seek, the land use change. I try to weigh them on a case-by-case basis, maybe there's something to be said for doing it here, but, I'd like to know more about those facts of the case, and certainly I think some other commissioners would like to know more too as this, comes back for, adoption or consideration for adoption.
Thank you.
The final amendment for your consideration for the briefing by Ms. Unica Mills.
Good
Thank you.
morning, Commissioners. Unica Mills, Planning Commission staff. I'm here to present the next item, HCCPA 1907, Tavallo Hills Neighborhood. This is a privately initiated plan amendment that's being brought forth by a group of homeowners. The site is located within the southeastern portion of Hillsborough County. It's located within the urban service area, as well as within the garden estates of the Brandon Community Plan. The site totals 50 parcels, totaling approximately 55 acres. And the request before you today is to change the future land use designation from residential 4 to residential 2, which would be a down plan. The land uses in the area are predominantly single-family residential. Lithia Pinecrest is northeast of the site here. We have Chimino Elementary, which is centrally located to the site here. I do want to point out to you there are several properties adjacent to that are not a part of this plan amendment. This parcel is left out. These two parcels are left out. This parcel is left out, and then we have a parcel that's left out here. Here is a zoomed-out version of the aerial, and it gives you some context as to where the urban service area line is here. The current future land use designation of the site is residential 4. Other land uses in the area include public, quasi-public here. We have natural preservation, which is south of the site, and we have residential 2, which is east of the site. And again, the proposal is to change the future land use designation to residential 2. Currently, the site could develop up to 223 dwelling units. If it were to be approved, it would decrease to 111 dwelling units. The site does not meet locational criteria and could not be considered for non-residential uses. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you today. Again, these amendments will be back before you on October 24th for a public hearing.
Thank you. Commissioner White, you recognize.
Well, I'll just say that's right in the heart of my district, and I'll tell you, we have a lot of Brandon residents that are very protective of that garden district designation within the Brandon Community Plan. So that's great that they're asking for this down planning, you know, to accommodate that. I've also been working with some landowners within that donut that you just saw there, and they're trying very hard to come up with a good infill project there that will be consistent with some of the older, larger lot suburban development around them. And it looks like you're seeing some steps in that direction here. So I think we're going to see a win-win here at the end.
Commissioner Overman, you recognize.
Could you bring up that illustration that showed where the property is as it pertains to the urban service area?
Yes.
It's inside.
It's inside the urban service area.
Sure, sure. And I think, to your point, if it makes sense for the community, and south of that, what's really obvious about this is that while it is in the urban service area, south of that is a really beautiful green area that appears to be, and this is why I keep wanting to get a map of our wildlife corridor preservation areas, is to look at the fact that we've got a lot of green area with water in that area that would suggest a lowering of the density in that particular area might make sense. And it sounds like that's what the community is asking for in this particular case. So thank you for showing that again. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith, you recognize.
Is that the Alafaya River south of there?
That I am not sure of.
Yes, and we've had a lot of issues with flooding of residential there. So, you know, lowering the density in places where, you know, in those floodplain areas might also be another factor, especially because as you lower density, you leave open more permeable surfaces. So might be another factor to consider, and I'd like to hear more of that maybe when that comes back. Looks like ELAP land down there, or
I think
the blue.
I think that the blue's the urban service area, but I think some of that though gets picked up either by ELAP or as part of the Lithia Springs Park, one of the two. I'm pretty certain.
All right. Thank you very much. That it?
That concludes our presentations. Thank you very much for your patience today.
We adjourn.
Yeah.